Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Jassy Correia. Jassy Correia was born in Praia, Cabo Verde, but her family moved to the United States when she was just 3 years old. She grew up in Dorchester, Massachusetts, and Boston became her hometown. As she grew older, Jassy became a loving mother to her daughter, Gabriella. However, Jassy's personal life was marred by difficulties. Jassy's husband, Miguel Castro, physically attacked her. Despite wanting to leave him, Miguel refused to let her go and severely beat her. Jassy eventually reported the incident to the police, and Miguel was sentenced to 4 years in prison. Jassy worked as a waitress at Del Frisco, a Boston restaurant. In her free time, she enjoyed dancing and photography. She cherished moments spent with her family, friends, and daughter, Gabriella. One of her favorite activities was taking her little daughter to the park. On the evening of February 23, 2019, Jassy celebrated her birthday with friends at Venue, a nightclub in Boston's Theater District. Before heading out, she left her 2-year-old daughter with her family and got ready for a night out, wearing a new orange jumpsuit. They had spent the evening dancing and drinking champagne at a nightclub. When the club closed, Jassy and her 2 friends stepped outside, but they eventually went their separate ways, leaving Jassy alone. She never made it home that night, and her phone was turned off, with all calls going straight to voicemail. For 2 days, Sunday and Monday, there was no news from Jassy. No one had seen her since she left the nightclub on Sunday morning. On Tuesday, February 26th, Jassy's father, Louis Coleman, and one of Jassy's friends went to the police station to report her disappearance. The police immediately launched an investigation. The detectives' first priority was to determine where Jassy went after leaving the nightclub. Jassy's family and friends distributed flyers around the city, hoping someone might have information about her whereabouts. The detectives also interviewed Jassy's friends who were with her that night, but they didn't know where she had gone after leaving the club. According to her friends, Jassy had planned to head home after saying goodbye. To gather more information, the police interviewed witnesses and reviewed CCTV footage from cameras inside and outside the nightclub. One recording showed Jassy on the sidewalk on Tremont Street, near the nightclub, talking to several people at 2:14 a.m. This was after she had left the club. The footage revealed that Jassy, who appeared to be intoxicated, mistakenly got into an Uber she hadn't ordered. The driver, unhappy about the mix-up, argued with her and eventually pushed her out of the vehicle. After being forced out of the car, Jassy continued to argue with the driver. That's when an unknown man approached her and took her hand, pulling her aside to talk. Despite possibly wanting to leave, Jassy was unable to free herself from his grasp. The CCTV footage showed the man, still holding Jassy's hands, pulling her closer. Eventually, Jassy left the area with him. In hindsight, it's clear that she had fallen prey to a predator who took advantage of her vulnerable state. The next camera footage showed Jassy jumping onto his back, and he carried her to his car. They drove away together. 14 minutes later, the police had many questions to answer. Who was this man, and where had he taken Jassy? Fortunately, they quickly identified the man and located his address. Louis Coleman, a 32-year-old man from a good family background, was with Jassy at the time of the incident. He had earned a master's degree in physics and had no prior record with the law. Notably, there was no information in the police database about Louis owning a car. However, his mother, a resident of California, was the owner of a 2016 red Buick, which matched the type of vehicle involved in the incident with Jassy. Louis lived in Providence, Rhode Island, about 50 miles from the Venue nightclub where he was last seen with Jassy. When police arrived at his home, they found that Louis was no longer there. However, CCTV footage from inside and outside the building revealed disturbing evidence. It's worth noting that the drive from the venue club to Louis's apartment typically takes about an hour. Since Louis returned to his apartment at 4:15 a.m. on Sunday, approximately 2 hours after he was seen leaving with Jassy, it's likely that he stopped somewhere along the way. The next day, Louis sent an email to his colleague stating that he would be taking a few more days off. Based on the content of the email, it appears that Louis was trying to buy time to cover his tracks. Over the next 2 days, Louis attempted to conceal evidence of the crime. Further CCTV footage analysis sheds light on what happened to Jassy after she left with Louis. Although the police never released the initial footage due to ethical concerns, it showed Louis entering his apartment building with Jassy. FBI Special Agent Thomas Sukus described the footage as follows. Louis was seen walking from a red sedan towards the front of the building, carrying a body with long hair and orange pants. Agent Sukus believes that this footage shows Louis carrying Jassy's body into his apartment building. According to Sukus, security footage from the building's lobby reveals that at approximately 4:27 a.m., Louis entered the building carrying an unconscious or already deceased Jassy in his arms. He proceeded to the elevator and took it to the 6th floor. Notably, on February 26, the same day Jassy's father reported her disappearance to the police, Louis made a suspicious purchase at Walmart. His receipt shows he bought multiple items that raise red flags, including protective suits, duct tape, electrical tape, candles, gloves, safety goggles, a mask, and Clorox bleach. The next day, while friends and family distributed flyers with Jassy's picture, Louis made another concerning purchase at Walmart, caught on camera at 9:22 p.m. This time, he bought a large suitcase and a canister. On February 27, 2019, at around 9:58 p.m., Louis returned to the apartment building, and video footage appears to show him carrying the newly purchased large suitcase. Further footage captures Louis taking the suitcase from his apartment to his vehicle in the parking lot, as evidenced by a recording at 2:15 a.m. on February 28. A video shows a man, later identified as Louis, struggling to lift a suitcase into the trunk of his car. This footage is part of a larger investigation into the disappearance of Jassy Correia, who was last seen on February 24 and was believed to be at Louis's apartment. Between 2:44 a.m. and 4:02 a.m., Louis was seen leaving the building multiple times, carrying various items including cardboard boxes, trash bags, a bottle of bleach, a computer tower, a laptop case, and a small duffel bag. On February 28, 2019, police obtained a search warrant for Louis's apartment. During their search, they found several suspicious items, including 2 packages of hooded coveralls and 2 respirator masks. They also examined a sofa in the apartment, which was missing one of its 4 large cushions. Outside the apartment complex, in a dumpster, police found a collection of items that raised further suspicions. These included white trash bags, a bag containing plastic sheets, men's jeans with bleach stains, and the belt. Additional items found in the dumpster included a white nylon hooded coverall, an unfilled box of baking soda, clear safety goggles, duct tape packaging, rubbing alcohol, Walmart bags, used plastic gloves, an empty package from a car air freshener, 3 used packages of purifying charcoal, and a sponge. On the afternoon of February 28, 2019, police stopped a car driven by Louis near Wilmington, Delaware. Officers ordered Louis to exit the vehicle and asked if he was alone. Louis reportedly responded by saying, "She's in the trunk." When police investigated, they found the body of Jassy wrapped in a sofa cushion cover inside a black trash bag, which was placed in a large suitcase that matched the one Louis had taken into his apartment the previous day. Experts who inspected the car found 2 cracks on the passenger side windshield, leading police to suspect that the man had attacked Jassy inside the vehicle. As a result, Louis was arrested and taken to a Delaware State Police barracks. During questioning, Louis had a large bandage on the right side of his face, which he claimed was from sheet when asked about it. A forensic examination revealed that Jassy died from a combination of strangulation and blunt force trauma. Additionally, seminal fluid was found on her body, and DNA analysis matched Louis's DNA. Prosecutors noted that Louis's DNA was also found under Jassy's fingertips. Although the exact location of Jassy's death could not be determined, it is believed to have occurred either in the car or at Louis's apartment. On Saturday, March 9, 2019, family and community members gathered at St. Peter's Parish in Dorchester to pay their respects to Jassy Correia. Many wore white or displayed buttons, shirts, and sweatshirts with Jassy's face and the phrase, "Justice for Jassy." Maka DeAndrade, Jassy's cousin and best friend, delivered the first eulogy, expressing the community's sadness and acceptance of Jassy's passing. DeAndrade said, "We may not understand why Jassy's life was cut short, but I have faith that her death was not in vain. I trust that God has a plan, and I have faith in that." Boston Mayor Marty Walsh addressed the crowd, vowing to work towards creating a safer world for women. He emphasized that young women should be able to go out and celebrate without fear and return home safely to their loved ones. He acknowledged the immense pain Jassy Correia's family has endured and expressed his condolences. When Correia expressed gratitude to the city and law enforcement agencies for their tireless efforts in investigating Jassy's disappearance and death. He also paid a heartfelt tribute to his daughter, saying, "Rest in paradise, my dear Jassy, rest in peace, my dear child." Louis Coleman, the suspect, has been charged with kidnapping resulting in death, a crime that could carry the death penalty or a life sentence. However, prosecutors have announced that they will not seek capital punishment. During the trial, prosecutors presented evidence, including a video of Coleman dragging Jassy's body into his apartment and his online search history following her disappearance. FBI agents reported on Louis's online activity in the days following the alleged kidnapping. He searched for topics such as whether a person can fit inside a suitcase and how to remove a tooth that is not loose. However, Louis's defense team has disputed the relevance of this evidence to the kidnapping charge. They argue that the prosecution's focus has been on Louis's actions after the alleged victim's death, rather than on the kidnapping itself. Attorney David stated, "This case is not about how Louis behaved after her death, or whether he did anything illegal or inappropriate. The government's evidence has mainly centered on these issues, but I believe they are not crucial to determining whether a kidnapping occurred." Court documents filed by the prosecution and defense provide a detailed account of the events surrounding Jassy Correia's disappearance and death. Although they sides present different versions of what happened, the documents reveal disturbing details about the circumstances leading up to Jassy's death. Prosecutors established that the defendant, Louis, was at the same nightclub as Jassy and her friends on the night of her disappearance. However, Louis was interacting with a different woman he had just met, not Jassy. They exchanged phone numbers and texted each other while at the club and after it closed. The prosecution and defense have presented conflicting narratives about the events that unfolded. Prosecutors argue that Jassy was not the aggressor and that Louis deceived her into getting into his car by offering her a ride to her friend's apartment, ultimately taking her life. In contrast, the defense claims that Jassy became aggressive after being pushed out of an Uber by the driver, and that she initiated a fight with Louis. The defense argues that the crime was a spontaneous altercation rather than a premeditated act of stalking, kidnapping, and murder. Prosecutors pointed out that the defendant's main argument was that the victim, who weighed 119 pounds, had attacked the defendant, who weighed 200 pounds. However, this claim was not convincing, especially considering that the victim's autopsy revealed the presence of multiple prohibited substances in her body, in addition to alcohol. The defense team attempted to minimize their client's involvement in the crime. Despite this, in June 2022, Louis was found guilty of one count of kidnapping resulting in death. The defense team then filed a motion arguing that the evidence was insufficient to support the conviction, but this motion did not change the outcome of the trial. In October 2022, Louis Coleman, 36, was sentenced to life in prison without parole for kidnapping and killing Jassy Correia. The court also ordered him to pay $60,000 in compensation to the victim's family. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Milleke van Doorn. Milleke grew up in a typical family with her parents and two sisters in Zaanstad, a city in North Holland, Netherlands. Milleke was a well-behaved child who stayed out of trouble and was friendly to everyone. Having just graduated from high school with a good reputation, she was looking forward to a bright future. However, her life took a dramatic turn one summer evening. That summer night changed everything for Milleke, and her story became a national sensation. On the evening of Sunday, June 7, 1992, Milleke attended a birthday party for a friend, which was held in an apartment in a local building. The building looked almost the same back then as it does today, except for the taller trees that surround it. Milleke left her birthday celebration early to catch the last bus home, but when she arrived at the bus stop, she realized she had missed it by 30 minutes. Unbeknownst to her, the bus schedule had been adjusted due to the Pentecost holiday. She had another option to get home than taking the train from the station located half a mile away on the same street. However, she never come home. The next morning, the pastor of St. Joseph's Church, which is near the train station, made a disturbing discovery while on his morning walk. He found a body floating in a pond adjacent to the church and immediately called the police at 8:54 a.m. Within minutes, detectives arrived at the scene, and the tragic news was soon delivered to the Van Doorn family, leaving them in a state of shock and grief. Milleke's body was pulled from the water, bearing signs of a violent crime. Injuries on her neck, face, and body, including multiple stab wounds, were evident. She was also found partially undressed. In an attempt to conceal the crime, the perpetrator had covered the body with reeds, but this effort failed, leading to its discovery. The news of Milleke's tragic death was devastating for her family, who had envisioned a bright future for her. The autopsy provided some information about the crime. The presence of semen and pubic hair in Milleke's body suggested a sexual assault. The fact that there was no water in Milleke's lungs indicated that she did not drown in the pond. Instead, she had likely been killed elsewhere, and her body was later hidden in the water in an attempt to disguise the crime. The exact time of Milleke's death remained unclear, with possibilities ranging from immediately after she left a party to several hours later. Milleke's body was found in the water, which made it impossible to determine the time of death by body temperature alone. The pond was where her body was dumped, but it was not the location where she was actually killed. The police were searching for the original crime scene, where they expected to find evidence due to the severity of Milleke's injuries. A key piece of evidence was that one of her shoes was missing, which could potentially lead investigators to both the crime scene and the perpetrator. The police distributed flyers with information about the case, including the fact that one of Milleke's shoes was missing. They asked the public to report if the shoe was found, and eventually, the second shoe was discovered. At the time of the investigation in 1992, DNA research was not advanced, and DNA samples taken from Milleke's body did not provide any useful leads for the detectives. The investigation began with interviews with Milleke's family to determine if she had any conflicts or enemies. However, the family reported that Milleke had no conflicts with anyone and was doing well personally. She had a boyfriend around her age, and they rarely fought. After learning that Milleke attended a birthday party on the night she died, investigators spoke to all the guests, including her boyfriend. However, numerous interviews did not produce any leads, and everyone reported the same story that Milleke had left the party just before midnight and planned to take a bus to her neighborhood. Unfortunately, none of Milika's friends were aware that the last bus had already departed by the time she reached the bus stop. In 1992, mobile phones were not widespread, making it difficult for investigators to determine if Milika had boarded the bus or reached her destination safely. After ruling out her friends as suspects, the police began searching for witnesses who may have seen or heard something on the night of the crime. They conducted door-to-door interviews with residents in the area where Milika's body was found, gathering a significant amount of information, but few specific details. Several witnesses reported hearing a woman scream briefly at night, but it was not alarming enough to prompt them to take action. Others claimed to have seen a man of Turkish appearance riding a bicycle towards the location where Milika's body was discovered. As a result, investigators shifted their focus to the Turkish community living in the Kogerveld neighborhood. Some young men from the Turkish community had previous run-ins with the law, drawing the attention of investigators. However, despite months of inquiry, the police were unable to identify a suspect. The men they questioned denied being near the pond on the night of the crime, leading to a stalemate in the investigation. 6 months after Milika van Doorn's murder, a significant discovery was made when a roofer working on the roof of St. Joseph's Church found one of Milika's shoes. This shoe had been on the roof the entire time, but it was unclear how it got there since the only way to access the roof was by ladder. The conclusion was that the perpetrator must have deliberately thrown the shoe onto the roof while at the pond, but the reasoning behind this action remains a mystery. Unfortunately, any potential evidence that may have been left on the roof was erased by harsh weather conditions over time. Years went by, and Milika's case remained unsolved, causing immense pain for her parents. Despite the passing of time, the police revisited Milika's case, conducting multiple interviews with local residents in an attempt to uncover new information. Additionally, the case was featured on several television programs, which led to an influx of calls from the public with potential leads. However, none of these efforts resulted in a breakthrough, and the identity of the suspect remains unknown. The authorities had the perpetrator's DNA samples on file, waiting for a breakthrough in testing technology. By analyzing these samples, forensic experts inferred that the perpetrator was likely a male of Turkish origin, residing in the Kogerveld area in 1992, and aged between 16 and 30 years at the time of the crime. To narrow down the search, nearly 200 men from the area voluntarily provided cheek swabs for DNA testing, but unfortunately, this effort did not yield a match. Almost 20 years after Milika's murder, a significant breakthrough occurred in April 2012. The Netherlands amended a law making it possible to conduct DNA kinship testing. By analyzing the autopsy results, evidence, and the perpetrator's behavior, investigators created a psychological profile of the suspect. The profile suggested that the perpetrator was a resentful and frustrated individual, angry at women in general. Milika was likely an accidental victim who happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. The perpetrator may have had a brief conversation with Milika before attacking her violently and threatening her. After satisfying his urges, he killed her to prevent her from identifying him. For several weeks after the crime, he kept a low profile, possibly pretending to be ill to avoid social interactions and conceal the scratches he sustained during the struggle with Milika. The police profiler described the suspect as a hot-tempered, selfish, and critical individual with few friends, poor relationships with girlfriends, and an inability to handle criticism. Based on this profile, investigators estimated that the perpetrator was between 18 and 25 years old in 1992. In April 2016, investigators reopened the case of Milika van Doorn, which had gone cold for over 20 years. A new lead emerged in June 2016, when a report was filed mentioning the names of 2 Turkish men who had lived in Zandvoort in 1992, around the time of Milika's death. Notably, both men had left the area shortly after the incident. The police aimed to determine if these 2 individuals were connected to the crime. Tracking them down proved challenging, and it took over a year to locate them in Turkey and obtain the necessary DNA samples. Finally, the DNA analysis did not yield a match with the DNA evidence found on Milica's body. In 2017, authorities used DNA typing technology to re-examine the Milica case. As a result, the police contacted 133 men of Turkish origin who lived in the area where the body was found in 1992, asking for voluntary DNA samples to compare to the crime scene DNA. The goal was to analyze the Y chromosome pattern, which is passed from father to son, to identify potential relatives of the perpetrator. The authorities assured the men that their DNA would only be used for this case and would be destroyed afterward. Most of the 133 men agreed to provide a DNA sample, only a few refused. A total of 126 men participated in the study. The police appreciated their cooperation, saying it was a testament to the community's desire for justice. After a month of analysis, the results showed that the DNA of the original perpetrator was not among the samples. However, the DNA of a man who was unknowingly related to the perpetrator was found. On Monday, December 10, 2017, the police arrested the suspect who had evaded capture for 25 years. The man, 47-year-old Hussein, had refused to submit his DNA for verification, but a clever investigation led to his downfall. Since local laws prohibit sharing suspects' personal information, his full identity and photo were not made public. A breakthrough in the case came when investigators cross-checked DNA profiles of relatives, focusing on those who, like Hussein, had refused to provide a sample. Coincidentally, Hussein's brother had willingly provided his DNA to the authorities, unaware of its potential impact on his sibling. This helped the investigators build a list of people connected to Hussein through family ties, ultimately revealing his identity as the suspect who had managed to stay hidden for nearly 2.5 decades. The police obtained a warrant to take a DNA sample from Hussein without his permission. A comparison with the DNA samples from Milica's body showed a perfect match, providing strong evidence against him. As a result, Hussein was formally charged with the crime. During his 2018 trial, Hussein claimed he was not guilty. Initially, he said he was possessed by an evil spirit and couldn't remember the attack. Later, he changed his story, saying he had a secret relationship with Milica, which is why his DNA was found on her body. He claimed he had to keep the relationship a secret because he had recently gotten married. However, the judge didn't believe Hussein's new claim for 2 reasons. Firstly, he only made this statement a year after his arrest, and secondly, no one could confirm that Milica and Hussein even knew each other, let alone had an intimate relationship. Milica's family testified during the trial. Milica's sister spoke directly to the suspect, saying that he had kept silent for years, hadn't cooperated with the police when they asked for a DNA test, and had continued living freely in the neighborhood. She accused him of going on to start a family and have had 4 daughters and called him a monster who had ruined Milica's life. She expressed her disgust that there were men like him who used and exploited women, treated them like trash, and then simply moved on with their lives. The other sister expressed her disappointment and frustration that Hussein had not taken responsibility for his actions or shown remorse. Instead, he had made a surprising claim of a secret relationship with the victim and complained about his own family struggles. She pointed out that Hussein's family could visit him in prison if they wished, but she could only visit her sister's grave. She hoped for justice, believing that her sister deserved it after meeting a terrible end. It was a deeply emotional day for Milica Van Doorn's family. When her father was given the opportunity to speak, he was filled with anger and said that Hussein's silence for 25 years was cowardly. He found Hussein's treatment of Milica to be extremely disturbing and was shocked by the news of her death. On December 11, 2018, Hussein was found guilty of Milica's murder based on DNA evidence. the court determined that the murder was committed to cover up another crime, a sex crime. Hussein was sentenced to 20 years in prison and ordered to pay €10,000 in compensation to Milika's family. Notably, Hussein refused to be present in the courtroom during the sentencing and instead remained in a cell outside. In February 2019, Hussein appealed his 20-year prison sentence and it was reduced to 19 years and 7 months. But finally, he did not get to serve the full reduced term. Hussein was found dead on June 13, 2022. According to his lawyer, he died shortly after exercising despite receiving emergency medical treatment. The attempts to revive him were unsuccessful. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Kaylee Mandadi. Kaylee Anita Mandadi was born on August 26, 1998, in Webster to Tak Mandadi and Allison Steele. The family was well off, with Allison being a scientist and Tak working as an international executive director at MGM Resorts. After her parents divorced, Allison remarried NASA engineer Lawrence Butin, who lived in Houston. Despite her parents' separation, Kaylee maintained a strong relationship with her father, regularly communicating with him. Her stepfather also adored Kaylee and became like a second dad to her. Kaylee was not only a grateful and loving daughter and granddaughter, but also an excellent student, team member, sister, and friend, known for her infectious laughter and kind heart that could light up any room. Kaylee excelled academically and was actively involved in various extracurricular activities in school, including horseback riding, piano playing, and theater performances. She was also a dedicated Girl Scout and enjoyed spending time with her friends and family, whether it was hiking with her parents or running around the neighborhood. After graduating with honors from Clear Creek High School in League City, Texas, in 2016, Kaylee went on to study communications at Trinity University in San Antonio. With her dark hair and radiant beauty, she quickly became popular among her peers, leading the football team's cheerleading squad and making many friends. Kaylee was always eager to try new and exciting things, from exploring uncharted territories to participating in extreme sports. Her love for animals led her to volunteer with an animal therapy group, where she found joy in helping others. During a football game, Kaylee met Mark Houghton, a 22-year-old athlete and professional baseball player. At first, she didn't notice him as she was already smitten with someone else. However, Mark was immediately captivated by her charisma and striking features, particularly her large black eyes. Mark and Kaylee's first 2 meetings didn't go smoothly, but Mark didn't give up. By September 2017, they had officially started dating. From the start, their friends and acquaintances thought they were a mismatched pair because they were both emotional and had short tempers. Their relationship was lacking in compromise and was characterized by heated arguments and confrontations from the beginning. The young couple's passion often turned to jealousy, leading to frequent quarrels. Friends who witnessed their relationship reported that Kaylee often had bruises on her arms and legs. A close friend shared a particularly disturbing incident in which Kaylee was too afraid to retrieve her phone from Mark and asked the friend to do it for her. Things eventually escalated to a frightening point where Mark became aggressive, threatened violence, and even pulled out a gun. Kaylee was aware that her boyfriend Mark had a jealous temper, and their loud arguments were frequent. Although she never wanted their fights to be public knowledge, she acknowledged that she wasn't blameless in their disputes. However, on September 24, 2017, her roommates intervened, calling the police around 1 a.m. after hearing loud noises and Mark yelling threats from Kaylee's room. When the police arrived, they found Mark alone in the room. Kaylee refused to press charges, downplaying the incident as just a lover's quarrel. Nevertheless, her friends suspected that Mark's anger issues were fueled by substance abuse and reported his violent threats, including an incident where he threatened to throw Kaylee off a balcony. Despite their tumultuous relationship, Mark and Kaylee had moments of deep love and affection. However, their bliss was short-lived, as their argument at the Malaluna Music Festival in San Antonio on October 29th, triggered by the unexpected appearance of Kaylee's ex-boyfriend, demonstrated. The fight was so intense that they left the festival early. Mark's black Mercedes arrived at a hospital 6 hours after their friends last saw them. He rushed out of the car, frantically waving and calling for help. In the front seat, medical staff found an unconscious, semi-nude girl. The car was in disarray, with Kaylee's clothes scattered around. She was slumped forward, resembling a lifeless doll. The medical staff rushed Kaylee to the emergency room on a stretcher. Mark told them they had taken illegal substances before attending the festival, which helped doctors treat her for a possible overdose. She was later transferred to a medical facility in Kyle, Texas, where a nurse specializing in intimate assault cases examined her and found additional bruises on her arms, legs, and ear. The autopsy revealed that Kaylee died from blunt force trauma to her face and head, indicating she was a victim of a deadly attack. The police then launched an investigation to find her killer. Mark became the main suspect since he was the last person seen with Kaylee that night. Although there was no concrete evidence linking him to the crime, Mark's behavior during police interviews raised suspicions. He changed his story multiple times, contradicting his initial account. Surveillance footage also showed him and Kaylee at locations he had previously denied being at. Additionally, interviews with Kaylee's friends and family revealed a history of aggressive behavior towards her, with one of her sisters even admitting to being terrified of him. Kaylee's mother, Allison Steele, has filed a lawsuit against Trinity University, accusing the institution of failing to protect her daughter from Mark's attacks. The lawsuit, filed in Becker County District Court, also names Mark Houghton as a defendant. It claims that Mark's assault led to Kaylee's death, motivated by jealousy. The lawsuit alleges that Trinity University's staff, administration, and campus police were aware of Mark's erratic behavior during his relationship with Kaylee. Despite this, the university took no action to protect Kaylee in the weeks leading up to her death, even though Mark had threatened to break her face or cause her serious harm. A Trinity University spokesperson declined to comment on the lawsuit's allegations, citing the ongoing legal process. Mark was banned from campus for a year due to an incident in his dorm room, but he repeatedly violated the ban. During investigations, it was discovered that Mark had a history of violent behavior towards his girlfriend, Kay, including threatening to harm her sisters and others. Her sisters reported that Mark had threatened to throw one sister off a balcony and shoot her ex-boyfriend's brothers. Mark had an arrest warrant issued against him, and he surrendered in February 2018. He faced multiple charges, including criminal acts, intimate violence, and abduction, but pleaded not guilty. The trial regarding Kaylee Mandadi's death began in December 2019. Prosecutors argued that Mark's volatile temper led him to fatally assault Kaylee in a fit of rage, causing her severe injuries. They claimed that Mark then waited 6 hours before taking her to the hospital. Mark's defense team suggested that Kaylee's death might have been caused by factors other than Mark's actions, such as the banned substances found in her system, which could have led to a spike in blood pressure or head trauma during intimate activity. Kaylee's mother described her daughter's injuries as extremely severe, comparable to those sustained from a fall from an airplane. The injuries covered her entire body, from her head to her toes, including bruises, red marks, and scratches. The only areas that were not injured were her back and the back of her legs. Dr. Susanna Dana, the forensic pathologist who performed Kaylee's autopsy, presented graphic evidence, including photographs of the victim's injuries. These images revealed a subdural hematoma, a type of bleeding in the brain typically associated with traumatic brain injury, on the right side of Kaylee's brain. Dr. Dana testified that Kaylee suffered severe cranial and facial injuries, including a dent in her skull and extensive bruising and trauma to her face. She also found bruises on Kaylee's eyelids, jaws, mouth, gums, lips, and cheeks, as well as hemorrhages in both eyes. Dr. William Anderson disagreed with Dr. Dana's conclusion, stating that the autopsy results were inconsistent with the idea that Kaylee was attacked. Instead, he believed that Kaylee's injuries were more likely caused by a fall and subsequent medical treatment. Defense attorney John Hunter argued that the prosecution lacked concrete evidence to explain what happened to Kaylee on the night in question, and that it was impossible to prove Mark's involvement. He highlighted Kaylee's history of drug use, including her prior treatment for substance dependence at a hospital. Jason Wallach, a professor, testified that Kaylee's blood contained a high level of MDMA, also known as ecstasy or molly, on the evening of October 29, 2017. The concentration of MDMA in her blood suggested that she could have suffered a minor head injury, which could then be exacerbated by the drug into a life-threatening condition. John Hunter suggested that a drug can affect individuals differently, leading to varying physical reactions, such as increased body temperature or electrolyte imbalance, which can cause loss of consciousness. During the trial, Mark Houghton testified that he and Kaylee Mandadi had an argument and engaged in intimate relations in the car before she passed out. He claimed that their intimacy was consensual and involved rough sex, which included strangling her at her request. However, the origin of the bruises on Kaylee's body remained unclear. Kaylee's mother, Allison, was convinced that Mark Houghton was responsible for her daughter's death. Despite being charged with her murder, Mark Houghton maintained his innocence during the 2019 trial. The defense argued that Kaylee's injuries were caused by hospital staff during resuscitation efforts, which led to a mistrial due to the jury's inability to reach a verdict. The case was presided over by Judge Raymond Angeline in the 144th District Court. Following the mistrial, Bexar County District Attorney Joe Gonzalez expressed disappointment and announced that he would review the case. Kaylee's parents decided to conduct their own investigation, focusing on a small bruise near Kaylee's ear. They believed that Mark Houghton might have hit her head against the car window, causing the bruise. Kaylee's parents collected evidence, including autopsy reports and photos, and obtained 3 affidavits under oath. This led to Mark Houghton's arrest on charges of aggravated intimate assault and criminal mischief. The timeline of events presented in the investigation highlighted Mark Houghton's alleged lies and the evidence that led to his arrest. During the trial, prosecutors portrayed Mark Houghton as a manipulative and controlling boyfriend who constantly called Kaylee and took her phone away. 2 weeks before her death, Mark Houghton pushed Kaylee against a brick wall and trashed her dorm room. Kaylee then asked for space, and Mark Houghton began sending her dozens of messages, threatening to end his life. The couple attended a festival where they argued over Kaylee's ex-boyfriend. Mark Houghton then took Kaylee to a deserted parking lot, where they stayed for over an hour. Prosecutors suggested that it was there that Mark Houghton attacked and killed Kaylee. Kaylee's family thanked the Texas Rangers for their work in bringing criminal charges against Mark Houghton. The prosecution considered presenting a video recorded by Kaylee's parents, but ultimately withdrew it due to potential complications. Mark Houghton was convicted of aggravated assault, causing harm that led to the death of Kaylee Mandadi. He was sentenced to 20 years in prison, with a $110,000 fine and restitution to Kaylee's family. He was also barred from contacting over 20 individuals involved in the case. Now over 30 years old, Mark is serving his sentence in Wilsey County Jail, eligible for parole in 2033. Although the conviction brought some closure to Kaylee's family, they felt the sentence was not enough for their loss. In the second trial, Mark faced additional charges, including aggravated assault and criminally negligent homicide. The prosecution presented a more comprehensive case against Mark, but the family was still dissatisfied with the outcome and sought a retrial. Kaylee's tragic story highlights the devastating impact of violence on young people and her family's quest for justice. Despite the conviction, Kaylee's family felt that the verdict did not serve justice for their daughter. In 2019, Kaylee's mother, Allison Steele, successfully lobbied the Texas legislature to expand the missing persons alert system in Texas. She also founded the nonprofit organization Kaylee's Calling, aiming to consolidate missing persons alert systems. Additionally, she established a nonprofit organization dedicated to providing public information about the Clear Alert, an emergency broadcasting alert in Texas for individuals aged 18 to 64. In 2021, Allison filed a civil lawsuit against Trinity University, alleging negligence in protecting her daughter. She claimed that none of Kaylee's guardians were informed that Mark Houghton had trashed her dorm room, giving him continuous access to her and making her vulnerable to manipulation. Despite being acquitted of the charge of ending a life, Mark was found guilty of aggravated assault, causing bodily harm. The family expressed satisfaction with the verdict, feeling relief that the legal proceedings had concluded, allowing them to begin the healing process. Losing a child is an agonizing ordeal, and sadly, it was a heart-wrenching journey that Kaylee's parents had to endure. Allison said they are still completely devastated by the loss of Kaylee, and asked those of faith to pray for her family, friends, and for justice in this matter. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today, we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you, the case of Rhonda Casto. Stephen and Rhonda, both 23, embarked on a hike along the Eagle Creek Trail. Before they started, Rhonda took a photo of Stephen with her cell phone and jokingly texted her mother, saying he might either propose to her or push her off a cliff. The weather was lovely as they continued their walk. However, Stephen later reported that Rhonda's behavior became strange. She asked him what he would do if something happened to her, and if he would care for their daughter. He reassured her that he would. As the weather started to deteriorate, Stephen suggested they head back, but Rhonda did not turn back. Instead, she wrapped a towel around her shoulders and began running down the narrow, slippery path. Stephen alleged that Rhonda lost her footing and fell about 150 feet down the Eagle Creek Trail. After her fall, Stephen claimed he hiked down to the ravine where she landed, but he had no cell service. He tried to call 911 but couldn't get through, so he left her behind, holding her body until he had to leave. Stephen says he hiked to the trailhead, where he finally reached emergency services for help. Later that day, rescuers retrieved Rhonda's body. However, Rhonda's family reported that Stephen showed no emotional response during her memorial service. Stephen disputes this, claiming he was overwhelmed with grief and continuously crying, but often withdraws from others when deeply upset. Following Rhonda's death, Stephen quickly gathered his and his daughter's belongings and relocated to the other side of Oregon to be closer to his own family. This sudden move raised suspicions among Rhonda's family, who began questioning what had transpired between the couple in the moments leading up to Rhonda's death. In 2006, Stephen moved from the United States to China with his young daughter. This bold move marked a fresh start for both of them. Having previously lived in China during his first marriage, Stephen was drawn to the country and its people. He chose to settle in Wuvi, a city about 75 miles outside of Shanghai. Stephen's decision to teach English to Chinese business people proved to be a great opportunity. His daughter, too, quickly adapted to her new life in China, becoming fluent in Mandarin within just 2 months. Both Stephen and his daughter thrived in their new surroundings. During his time in China, Stephen met and fell in love with Landy Yin Yan. Landy formed a strong bond with his daughter, Man, taking on a motherly role that brought them closer together. Stephen was deeply grateful for Landy's influence in his daughter's life. After a year of dating, Stephen proposed to Landy, and she happily accepted. In February 2015, Stephen and his daughter returned to the United States, where the couple planned to get married. Stephen and his fiancée planned to hold 2 wedding ceremonies, one in America and one in China, to include their families and friends from both countries. Stephen and his daughter arrived in the United States a day before his fiancée, flying into San Francisco to catch a connecting flight to Oregon. As they exited the plane, an officer approached Stephen, telling him they needed to detain him due to an issue with his luggage. The police soon arrived, taking Stephen into custody and separating him from his daughter. What Stephen didn't know was that, during his time in China, detectives had been working tirelessly to investigate Rhonda's death. The suspicious circumstances surrounding her fatal fall from Eagle Creek had led them to continue their inquiry, ultimately concluding that Stephen was responsible for her death. Rhonda's mother played a crucial role in keeping the investigation into her daughter's murder open, regularly contacting detectives for updates. Eventually, the police arrested Stephen at an airport for Rhonda's murder and extradited him to Oregon. When questioned, Stephen claimed he thought he was dreaming and hoped to wake up at home in China with his girlfriend Landy. Unfortunately, his nightmare was reality. Initially, Stephen's bail was set at $2 million, and he spent 14 months in jail awaiting trial. However, the judge later reduced his bail to $250,000, which his attorney secured, and Stephen was released with an ankle monitor. Rhonda's family was overjoyed to learn of Stephen's arrest, knowing justice was finally being served. The arrest brought relief and comfort to Rhonda's loved ones, who had been grieving her loss for years. Stephen's attorney then conducted experiments at Eagle Creek Trail, where Rhonda died, to argue in court that her death was an accidental slip rather than a push by Stephen. The Eagle Creek Trail, where Rhonda fell to her death, is one of the most popular hiking spots in the Columbia River Gorge, known for its breathtaking beauty. During Stephen's preliminary hearings, the medical examiner who performed Rhonda's autopsy revealed a crucial piece of evidence. All of Rhonda's injuries were below the waist. This finding was key to Stephen's defense, as it suggested that Rhonda might have taken her own life. The defense team argued that Rhonda's injuries, including her broken pelvis, were consistent with a feet-first fall, rather than a head-over-heels tumble, which would indicate that she was pushed. Additionally, they presented notes from Rhonda's therapy sessions, which showed that she was depressed, but never expressed suicidal thoughts. Rhonda had previously stated that her relationship with Stephen was unloving. The defense team used this, along with her history of depression, to suggest that Rhonda might have intentionally taken her own life. By presenting this evidence, they hoped to discredit the prosecution's claim that Stephen had pushed Rhonda, resulting in the injuries that ultimately led to her death. Stephen made a claim that Rhonda had suffered from depression and had attempted suicide multiple times before they met, but Rhonda's family disputed this and accused Stephen of lying. They suggested that Stephen was trying to shift the blame onto Rhonda for her death, to distract from his own role in her murder. Stephen also stated that Rhonda had struggled with drug addiction since she was 12, claiming that she had experimented with various substances. However, the medical examiner's report only found slight traces of marijuana and the prescription medication Rhonda was taking for anxiety and depression, which she had been experiencing due to postpartum depression. During the preliminary hearings for Rhonda's murder, disturbing evidence came to light, implicating Stephen in her death. It was revealed that Stephen had been in a romantic relationship with Rhonda's 16-year-old sister, Melanie, despite being in his 30s. This discovery raised serious concerns, given the significant age gap between Stephen and the underage Melanie. The prosecution argued that Stephen's inappropriate relationship with Melanie, his girlfriend Rhonda's sister, could have been a motive for Rhonda's murder. Rhonda had discovered her husband's infidelity, leading to tension and a possible reason to kill her. After Stephen was arrested for Rhonda's murder, he was also charged with multiple counts of sexual assault and sodomy related to his relationship with Melanie. Before his murder trial, in 2005, Stephen pleaded guilty to 2 counts of sexual abuse, admitting to having sexual intercourse with Melanie twice. However, he later claimed that he was forced into making this admission and that it was false. Stephen said he only pleaded guilty because it would allow him to fight for custody of his daughter, and he was desperate to get her back. In contrast, the state alleged that the relationship between Stephen and Melanie lasted for over 4 years. Stephen eventually admitted to having a sexual relationship with Melanie, Rhonda's teenage sister. Rhonda sent a text message to her teenage sister Melanie, expressing her negative feelings towards Stephen. In the message, Rhonda called Stephen a piece of garbage and accused him of using Melanie to hurt her. This suggests that Rhonda was aware of Stephen's manipulative behavior, which her mother confirmed. According to Rhonda's mother, Rhonda loved Melanie and wanted to repair their relationship, which had likely been damaged by Stephen's actions. Evidence presented in court revealed that Stephen's relationship with Rhonda was not as perfect as he claimed. Additionally, the court learned of Stephen's disturbing past, including a deviant sexual history. Specifically, it was revealed that only 6 months after the death of his daughter Rhonda's mother, Stephen was arrested and charged with 5 counts of sexual abuse for allegedly touching a 13-year-old girl. Stephen denied the allegations against him, but later confessed to sending inappropriate text messages and a photo to the victim, admitting his actions were wrong and pleading guilty to sexual harassment. In court, evidence presented included photos of Rhonda's bruised back, taken by herself. Rhonda's friend testified that she had overheard arguments between Rhonda and Stephen when they were on the phone. Additionally, Stephen's ex-wife testified that he had previously attempted to harm her. Despite denying the allegations, Stephen was not charged in China. Rhonda's family, however, remains convinced that Stephen was responsible for her death, believing he was motivated by a life insurance policy he had taken out on her, which he had recently increased. Her mother shared her concerns, revealing that Stephen had suffered significant financial losses from day trading the previous year and was struggling financially. Additionally, those who knew Rhonda well can confirm that she adored her 9-month-old daughter, and it's unthinkable that she would have ended her own life by jumping from Eagle Creek in May 2017. Rhonda's family was stunned to learn that the state had reached a settlement with the defense, resulting in Stephen pleading guilty to criminally negligent homicide, a lesser charge than murder. Despite believing that Stephen had murdered Rhonda, the state's case was weak due to a lack of physical evidence proving he had pushed her from the Eagle Creek Trail. Stephen received credit for time served while awaiting trial, but was required to remain on parole for 3 years. After his release, Rhonda's family and friends felt that justice had not been served, believing Stephen should have faced harsher consequences for his actions. At Stephen's sentencing hearing, Rhonda's sister delivered an emotional impact statement, condemning Stephen for destroying their family and causing immense pain and sorrow. Rhonda's mother also spoke, expressing her bewilderment and frustration, saying that Stephen's actions had shattered their family and left them heartbroken. Stephen said he didn't push Rhonda, but took a deal because he was running out of time to regain custody of his daughter. He claimed he was willing to accept the consequences for his actions to protect his child. However, Rhonda's family and friends didn't believe him. In a 2018 interview, Stephen made a shocking claim about Rhonda's death. He said that when he found her on Eagle Creek Trail, she was still alive. The interviewer asked if Stephen had ended Rhonda's life to spare her further suffering. Stephen responded by asking a hypothetical question: if you shoot a suffering fellow soldier to end their pain, is that murder? He suggested that in some cases, such an act could be seen as justified, although still a form of homicide. While Stephen never directly admitted to harming Rhonda, his comments hinted at the possibility of his involvement in her death. Rhonda's mother applied for Social Security survivor benefits in 2017 on behalf of Rhonda's infant daughter. She claimed the child lived with her and promised to use the funds solely for the baby's care. However, the state accused her of fraud, alleging that between 2010 and 2014, the child actually lived with her father, Stephen, not with Rhonda's mother as claimed. The state charged Rhonda's mother with stealing nearly $40,000 in government funds over 5 years. Her defense team argued that she was trying to prevent Stephen from gaining custody of his daughter and accessing a $1 million life insurance policy he had taken out on Rhonda's life. The defense also highlighted Rhonda's mother's struggle with depression, which worsened after Rhonda's death. They claim that she used marijuana to cope with her grief, which impaired her judgment and clouded her thinking. Rhonda's 53-year-old mother was sentenced to a month in a halfway house and 3 years of probation for stealing government funds. She had pleaded guilty to the crime and was also ordered to repay the $39,100 she stole. Rhonda and Stephen's daughter was placed in foster care in October 2015, after the Department of Human Services took custody of her. This happened because Stephen pleaded guilty to sexually abusing a 13-year-old girl, which led an Oregon court to terminate his parental rights. However, Stephen is appealing this decision. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Sherry Papini. Keith and Sherry Papini first met in middle school when Keith was in 7th grade and Sherry was in 8th. They shared their first kiss with each other. Their friendship flourished quickly, and they remained close throughout their teenage years. However, as they grew older, they drifted apart and went their separate ways. Years later, Sherry married another man in 2006, but the marriage was short-lived, lasting only 2 years. After her divorce, Sherry found herself single again. Then, by chance, she ran into Keith, and the spark between them was immediately rekindled. The time they had spent apart had given them both personal growth and maturity, and they realized how much they had missed each other. Keith and Sherry decided to give their love a second chance, and they started dating. As they spent more time together, their connection grew stronger every day. Within a year of reuniting, they knew they were meant to be together. They got married in 2009 and had 2 children, settling down in Redding, California. Sherry used to work in telecommunications, but after having children, she became a stay-at-home mom. Keith continued to work at Best Buy as a member of the Geek Squad. The Papini family seemed to have a perfect life from the outside. However, on November 2nd, 2016, Keith's world was turned upside down when he came home to find his wife, Sherry, missing. It was unusual for her not to be there, as she was always home when he returned from work. At first, Keith thought she might have gone for a walk, but as time passed and she didn't come back, he grew increasingly worried. Keith called the daycare center their children attended to see if Sherry had picked them up, but the school secretary told him she hadn't. This heightened Keith's concern, and he decided to use the Find My iPhone app on his phone to track her location. The app showed that her phone was at the end of their driveway. Alarmed, Keith rushed outside to search the area and found Sherry's phone lying on the ground, with her headphones nearby. When Keith found Sherry's phone and headphones at the end of the driveway, he made a disturbing discovery. There was strands of hair entangled in the headphones. He immediately contacted the authorities at the Shasta County Sheriff's Office, who took Sherry's disappearance seriously and brought in the FBI right from the start. Keith was desperate to find Sherry and get her back safely. To do this, he knew it was crucial to get her name and face out to the public. So he spoke to the media, hoping to generate support and assistance in finding her. The media played a huge role in spreading the story of Sherry's disappearance, and her beauty, blonde hair, and blue eyes made her case especially captivating to the public. As a result, news channels eagerly covered every detail of the story. After Sherry went missing and it became public, the police received many tips, but none of them led to finding her. As they continued to investigate, they looked at Sherry's phone for clues. They found a heated text conversation between Sherry and her husband Keith from a few months earlier, which made the police suspicious of Keith's possible involvement. Despite this, Keith was cooperative and offered to take a lie detector test to clear his name. He passed the test. In addition to the argument with Keith, the police found texts on Sherry's phone from men using fake female names. It seemed like Sherry was planning to leave Keith. On November 10, 2016, the police tracked down one of these men and questioned him about Sherry's disappearance. The man claimed to have met Sherry 5 years prior at a restaurant during a work conference she was attending. Although he said he didn't know her current whereabouts, he shared some information about her relationship with her husband Keith. According to the man, Sherry did not respect Keith and was even fearful of him. He alleged that Keith was violent and abusive, often locking Sherry up in their home. After a tip from a man who knew Sherry, claiming that her husband Keith was abusive, the police launched an investigation. However, after speaking with friends and neighbors, they found no evidence to support the claims of Keith's violence. Several days into Sherry's disappearance, on November 24, 2016, the police received a call at 4:32 a.m. on Thanksgiving morning. The caller reported a woman in distress on the side of I-5. The police rushed to the scene and found a woman bound with chains and zip ties. It took a moment for the officers to realize Sherry Papini, who had been missing for days. Relieved to find her alive, they carefully freed her from the restraints and took her to the hospital for medical attention. When Sherry arrived at the hospital, it was clear that she had been through a traumatic experience. Her body was covered in bruises, her hair was noticeably shorter, and she had a burn mark on her arm, as well as a bad rash. She had also lost a significant amount of weight, weighing in at only 87 pounds. While Sherry was recovering at Woodland Memorial Hospital, the police tried to interview her, but she was too emotional to provide any information. The only condition under which she would cooperate was if her husband Keith was present in the room. With Keith by her side, Sherry recounted the terrifying incident. She said she was out jogging when a dark-colored SUV, driven by two women, approached her. She got out of the vehicle, pointed a gun at her, while Sherry Papini stayed in the car. Sherry was forced into the back of the SUV against her will. Before getting into the vehicle, Sherry had the presence of mind to leave behind her phone and headphones on the driveway, along with some strands of her hair. She did this intentionally, hoping that Keith would find them and realize something was wrong. Sherry shared the details of her abduction with the police and her husband Keith. During the journey, she kept dozing off in the back of the SUV, making it difficult for her to keep track of time. The two women had wrapped something around her face, preventing her from seeing her surroundings. They told her that she was being kidnapped because a man wanted to buy her and she was being taken to meet him. However, they refused to reveal the man's identity or location. Sherry was terrified and worried about her fate, unsure of where she was being taken or what would happen to her during her captivity. She also claimed to have been physically abused by one of the women, who frequently hit her, leaving her with multiple injuries. Sherry claimed that her captors branded her right shoulder with the word Exodus to attract a buyer, who was allegedly a police officer. She also said that her captors constantly played mariachi music, which she found disorienting and unsettling. This music added to the oppressive atmosphere of her captivity, making her feel more isolated. Sherry was held in a single room with a boarded-up window. She was chained in a closet that served as a bathroom with a bucket for sanitation purposes. About 3 weeks into her captivity, Sherry heard a gunshot. After that, she had been with her disappeared, leaving Sherry to wonder if she had been killed. Sherry Papini, who had been quiet until now, took control of the situation. She instructed Sherry to get into a car, and they drove along I-5. Without warning, the car stopped, leaving Sherry startled and disoriented. She looked around, trying to understand what was happening. The younger woman then told Sherry to get out of the car. Confused and unsure, Sherry cautiously did as she was told. As Sherry exited the car, she felt a mix of fear and excitement. Was this her chance to escape, Or was she being led into an even more dangerous situation? She was left with more questions than answers, feeling uncertain and scared. After being found safe on the side of I-5, the Shasta County Sheriff's Office held a press conference to announce Sherry's return. During the conference, the police reported that Sherry had been abducted by 2 Hispanic women, which sparked widespread concern among the public. However, this news brought unintended consequences. Following the press conference, a wave of racism erupted, targeting individuals of Spanish descent. The reporting of Sherry's abduction had fueled public fear and anxiety, leading some to unfairly blame individuals associated with the Hispanic community. After being abducted, Sherry returned home and began attending therapy sessions to cope with her trauma. As a California resident, she was eligible for the Victims' Compensation Fund, which uses public funds to help pay for victims' therapy. In the aftermath, she became withdrawn, spending more time at home and avoiding social outings. 1 year into the investigation, police released a composite sketch of 2 Hispanic women believed to be involved in the crime. Despite this development, no new leads emerged. The police also revealed that they had found male DNA on Sherry's underwear, which did not match her husband Keith's DNA. 2 years passed with no matches on the male DNA, and the case remained unsolved. However, in 2020, a long-awaited breakthrough finally occurred. The police working on Sherry's case decided to try a new approach to find the owner of the unknown DNA. They used a technique called familial DNA, which compares the DNA profile to potential relatives of the donor. This method is commonly used in criminal investigations to analyze DNA evidence and identify possible family members of a suspect. By looking at specific genetic traits shared among family members, investigators can create a shorter list of potential suspects and explore possible family connections. In the Sherry Papini case, the police were surprised to discover that the DNA found in her underwear matched a close relative of James Ray's, her ex-boyfriend. This new information raised many questions and became a crucial moment in the investigation. The police suspected Sherry's ex-boyfriend, James Ray's, of being involved in her abduction. To investigate, they collected a soda bottle from his trash in June 2020 and sent it to a forensic lab for DNA testing. A month later, the lab results showed a match between James's DNA and the DNA found on Sherry's underwear the day she was discovered. With this new evidence, the police went to James's home in Costa Mesa, California, where he worked at a sports shop, to ask him about Sherry's case. James told the police that he had dated Sherry about 10 years prior, and the last time he saw her was a year after they broke up. He claimed to have only heard about her disappearance and safe return through rumors. During the police interview, James initially denied any involvement in Sherry's kidnapping. However, as the conversation progressed, he revealed that he was still close friends with Sherry despite their breakup 10 years prior. Although James admitted to playing a role in her disappearance, he claimed he didn't kidnap her. Instead, he insisted he was merely assisting a friend in need. James reported to the police that Sherry reached out to him for help, claiming she needed to escape her abusive husband, Keith. On November 2, 2016, James told police that a friend had lent him a car, which he used the next day to pick up Sherry. According to James, Sherry hid in the back seat of the car, lying down during the drive to Costa Mesa. During her stay at James's house, Sherry mostly stayed in her room, only coming out to help with chores like cleaning and cooking. She even boarded up the bedroom window, as she wanted to feel secure with the door closed. James noticed that Sherry was intentionally trying to lose weight by barely eating. Sherry asked James to help her harm herself, including hitting herself to create bruises. James was uncomfortable with this request, but he still agreed to help her, even going so far as to shoot a hockey puck off her knee at her request. Despite his reservations, James participated in these harmful activities with Sherry. James confessed to branding Sherry with the word Exodus on her right shoulder using a wood-burning tool they had bought from Hobby Lobby. Before Sherry left his house, She asked James to get chains and zip ties, which he used to bind her securely, before driving her to Redding, California. During the drive, Sherry told James to stop the car, which he did, and she escaped. When questioned by the police, James denied knowing anything about the two Hispanic women Sherry claimed had abducted her. However, when the police searched James's house, they were shocked to find that several rooms matched the descriptions Sherry had given of the place where she was held captive. Specifically, James' bedroom and closet exactly matched a drawing Sherry had made for the police, detailing the layout of the rooms she had been confined to. The police discovered a striking similarity between a table at James's house and the one Sherry described in her initial interviews. They decided to bring Sherry and Keith in for another interview at the police station. The police had accumulated substantial evidence that led them to believe Sherry had faked her own abduction. They intended to confront her with their findings during the interview. Before revealing the truth, they asked Sherry if she wanted Keith to leave the room. Sherry remained silent. The police then decided to leave the couple alone for a few minutes. During this time, Sherry approached Keith and confessed that she didn't want the police to find the Hispanic woman who had supposedly abducted her. She felt indebted to this woman for sparing her life. Sherry refused to press charges against the woman who attacked her. Keith listened to her reasons, but he was skeptical and worried. Sherry's explanation didn't make sense to him, and he was starting to get scared. He pointed out that even if Sherry didn't want to press charges, the attacker would still face consequences for her actions. The police re-entered the interview room with an update. They had found a familial DNA match for the male DNA on Sherry's clothing, and it led them to James Reyes, Sherry's ex-boyfriend. When Keith heard the name, he had a visceral reaction. He knew James as Sherry's ex. The police told Sherry and Keith that James Reyes, Sherry's ex-boyfriend, had passed a lie detector test. They suspected that Sherry had faked her own kidnapping and claimed to have evidence to support James's version of events. The police told Sherry that they believed her significant weight loss during her disappearance was intentional, as she had chosen to eat very little. They also suggested that the rash on her arm was caused by the cleaning products she had used at James's house. Furthermore, the police alleged that James had used a wooden tool bought from Hobby Lobby to brand Sherry. They also claimed that Sherry's broken nose was self-inflicted, caused by hitting herself with a hockey stick. Despite the mounting evidence against her, Sherry remained calm and pretended not to understand what the police were talking about. Sherry Papini claimed to have not seen her ex-boyfriend James in years, stating she last saw him at his brother's funeral in Southern California. However, the police knew she was lying because James had provided them with information about her disappearance that only someone close to her would know. On March 3, 2022, the FBI arrested Sherry on charges of lying to federal agents and faking her own abduction. 6 weeks later, she agreed to a plea deal, admitting to orchestrating her kidnapping. Sherry's lawyers requested a sentence of 1 month in prison, followed by 7 months of house arrest. However, the prosecution recommended an 18-month sentence. In September 2022, the judge sentenced Sherry to 18 months in prison and ordered her to pay a $300,000 fine. The judge doubted that Sherry would ever be able to pay the fine, saying it would take winning the lottery. During the sentencing, the judge called Sherry a manipulator and habitual liar, stating that he had no doubt she would have continued lying if she hadn't been caught. The judge told Sherry that she needed to be punished to stop others from committing similar crimes. Sherry had taken advantage of many resources, including money meant for victims, Social Security disability payments, and a GoFundMe account set up after her fake kidnapping. The judge wanted to deter others from committing similar crimes by punishing Sherry. She spoke at her sentencing hearing, expressing regret and apologizing to those who had suffered because of her actions. Sherry acknowledged her guilt, saying she was responsible for lying and bringing shame to herself and those around her. In August 2023, Sherry was released from prison and moved to a halfway house. Sherry and her husband Keith separated on the day of her arrest in March 2022. After Sherry pleaded guilty, Keith filed for divorce the next month and sought full custody of their children. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Pam Hupp. Pam Hupp was born on October 20th, 1958 in Delwood, Missouri, as the second child of the Newman family. She married Mark Hupp and they had 2 children together. In 2001, the family moved to Fallon, Missouri. Pam had a varied work history, including a job as a life administrator at State Farm until 2010, when she stopped working due to disability claims related to leg and back pain. Despite some past legal issues, including 2 charges of forgery, Pam's acquaintances would never have suspected her of being capable of murder. However, on August 16, 2016, Pam shot and killed Louis Gumpenberger, a mentally challenged man who had been struggling with physical and mental disabilities since a 2005 car accident. Pam claimed that Louis had attacked her with a knife after jumping out of a passing vehicle, and that she had defended herself by slapping the knife away and then shooting him 5 times with her Ruger LCR, which she retrieved from her nightstand. However, this account of events seems suspicious, and it is uncertain what really happened that day. Pam accused Louis of instructing her to drive him to the bank to withdraw money belonging to Russ Faria, a man wrongly convicted of murdering his wife Betsy in 2011. According to Pam, Louis became agitated and excited, saying, "We're going to the bank. We're getting Russ's money." However, evidence later revealed that Louis's true intention was to have Louis Gumpenberger attack and kill Pam. A handwritten note found at the crime scene contained instructions for Gumpenberger. First, he was to obtain Russ's money from Pam's apartment. Next, he was to kill Pam and make it look like Russ's wife was responsible. The note included gruesome details, such as ensuring the knife was left sticking out of Pam's neck. The perpetrator was willing to pay Gumpenberger a large sum of money for carrying out this heinous act. Pam Hupp was arrested for the murder of Lou Gumpenberger. However, a question arose. Was Gumpenberger a hired assassin, or did Pam manipulate him, using a mentally disabled man as a scapegoat? The truth began to unravel when Pam went to the O'Fallon Police Department voluntarily. During her interview, Pam asked if it would be recorded, mentioning that she normally appeared with Chris Hayes, a KTVI news reporter. She even blamed Hayes for attracting criminals through his reporting. Pam had a history of pretending to be Kathy, a producer of an NBC TV show. According to the O'Fallon police chief and the St. Charles County prosecutor, Pam used this persona to lure Gumpenberger into her home, where she tricked him into recreating a 911 call, providing a cover for the brutal crime she was about to commit. After killing Gumpenberger, Pam Hupp planted evidence to incriminate herself, including writing a note found on his body. The police had a strong case against her due to the overwhelming evidence they uncovered. They found $9 bills on Gumpenberger's body, which Pam had placed there. The 10th $9 bill was later discovered in her dresser, and its serial number matched 3 of the $100 bills, also found on Gumpenberger. Pam Hupp was arrested on August 23, 2016, and charged with first-degree murder and armed criminal action. When she requested to use the restroom on the day of her arrest, she attempted to commit suicide by stabbing her wrist and neck with a ballpoint pen. Fortunately, she did not succeed. On January 30, 2017, Pam appeared in court for the first time. The prosecutor, Phil Groyne, argued that her actions demonstrated a consciousness of guilt. A grand jury convicted her of all charges. In December 2016, her bail was set at $2 million. Pam's trial began in 2017, during which she pleaded not guilty, prompting the prosecutor to pursue the death penalty. The prosecutor's reasoning was that Pam had seemingly chosen her victim, Gumpenberger, at random. In June 2019, Pam entered an Alford plea, which allowed her to plead guilty while maintaining her innocence. This move nullified the death penalty charge and led to a jury trial being cancelled. As a result, Pam was sentenced to life imprisonment without parole in August 2019. Following her sentencing, she called her then-husband Matt Hupp and explained that she had confessed to killing Louis Gumpenberger to avoid putting their family through a lengthy and distressing trial. During the trial, disturbing facts about Pam's past came to light, shocking the police, judges, and the public. In June 2016, Judge Cunningham ruled that evidence related to the brutal murder of Betsy Faria could be presented in court. This ruling led to the reopening of the Betsy Faria case. Betsy, born Elizabeth Faria, worked with Pam at State Farm as a life insurance administrator and lived in Troy, Missouri, with her husband Russ Faria and 2 daughters from a previous relationship. Betsy was diagnosed with cancer in 2010. In October 2011, she discovered that the cancer had spread to her liver and she only had a few months left to live. Sadly, she passed away on December 22, 2011. Before her death, Betsy changed the beneficiary of her $150,000 life insurance policy from her husband to Pam Huff, without informing her husband or daughters. Pam claimed that Betsy had instructed her to set up a trust fund for her daughters, but later alleged that Betsy wanted her to keep the money because they had a romantic relationship. Betsy's daughters took Pam to court in 2014, trying to reclaim their mother's life insurance fund. However, their case was dismissed in 2016. In the same year, Russ, Betsy's husband, sued State Farm. On December 27, 2011, just 5 days after making Pam the beneficiary of her life insurance policy, Betsy attended a chemotherapy session at the Alvin J. Sitman Cancer Center. Weakened from the treatment, she went to her mother's house, where it was agreed that Russ would pick her up, or she would stay overnight. However, Pam unexpectedly showed up and insisted on driving Betsy home, claiming to have dropped her off around 7 p.m. Betsy's daughter reported that her mother didn't answer her call at around 7:21 p.m. Later, at 9:40 p.m., Russ, Betsy's husband, desperately called 911 to report that his wife had taken her own life. However, Russ had been at his friend Michael Corbin's house, watching movies from 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. Afterward, he drove to Arby's Lake in St. Louis before returning home. When the emergency responders arrived about 10 minutes after Russ's call, they quickly realized that Betsy's death was not a suicide. Her body was found lying on her right side, with 55 stab wounds and a deep cut on her wrist. A kitchen knife was lodged in her neck, and another knife was discovered under her pillow. Notably, there were no bloodstains or footprints around the entrance of the house. The investigation determined that Betsy died between 7:20 p.m. and 9:41 p.m. Suspicion immediately fell on Russ Faria, who became the prime suspect. The authorities believed he had a motive, as his wife had refused to give him access to $150,000. Russ was arrested and charged with his wife's murder, while the real killer remained at large. Russ Faria was arrested the day after Betsy's death. He became the prime suspect due to his 911 call, in which he claimed her death was a suicide. However, a glance at the body immediately ruled out this possibility. Additionally, a pair of blood-stained slippers were discovered in his closet, incriminating evidence against him. Russ was subsequently charged with first-degree murder and armed criminal action in court in January 2012, just a day after his wife's funeral. The investigation revealed more damning evidence against Russ. He performed poorly on a polygraph test, leading police to regard his behavior as suspicious and erratic. Furthermore, at Pam's request, the police searched Betsy's laptop and found a disturbing Word document in which she expressed her fear of losing her life at the hands of her husband. Russ was held on a $250,000 bail, which he couldn't afford, so he was kept in county jail until his trial on November 18, 2013. During police questioning, Pam revealed that Russ had a history of violence, heavy drinking, and had previously threatened Betsy, making it easy to suspect him of the murder. The prosecution argued that Russ had a strong motive to kill his wife. She had received a large sum of $150,000 for her friend, bypassing him in the process. According to Judge Christina Menem, this motive was enough to implicate Russ. At the trial, Russ's lawyer, Joel Schwartz, defended his client's innocence. Schwartz claimed that Russ had spent most of the night with friends who corroborated his alibi. Additionally, Russ had purchased food at a store that evening, which made it physically impossible for him to stab his wife 55 times within the given time frame. Furthermore, there were no bloodstains on his clothes or body. The prosecutor countered that Russ's friends might have been involved in the crime and had lied about his whereabouts that night. The prosecutor suggested that Russ's friends had accompanied him to buy food at ABY and stage an alibi. The presiding judge, Christina Menem, refused to allow Joel Schwartz to present crucial evidence that implicated Pam as an alternative suspect. This evidence included phone records showing Pam was still near Betsy's apartment 30 minutes after she claimed to have left, as well as the fact that Betsy had made Parry of a $150,000 life insurance policy just 5 days before her death. Despite Pam having a clear motive, the judge chose to ignore it. In a closed hearing, Pam claimed to have put $100,000 of the insurance money into a trust fund for Betsy's daughters. However, in a later civil deposition, she admitted to keeping the money for herself, stating that she didn't want her daughters, mother, or sisters to have it. Meanwhile, Detective Mike Merkel of the Lincoln County Sheriff's Office reported that a crime scene camera had malfunctioned, resulting in important photographs being unable to be developed. Despite the mounting evidence against him, Russ was convicted of first-degree murder and armed criminal action in November 2013. He was sentenced to life imprisonment without parole for 30 years. Before Correia's second trial, Attorney Schwartz finally obtained the photos that showed no blood trail. To this day, I've tried to identify who in the prosecutor's office sent me those photos, but I've been unsuccessful. Fox 2 News was present in the courtroom when Schwartz dramatically revealed that he had uncovered evidence that police and prosecutors had been hiding. After this, Russ was transferred to the Jefferson City Correctional Center, a welcome development for Pam's sister Betsy. During the trial, Russ's wife testified that he had once pressed a pillow against her face, whispering, "This is what it feels like to die," because she had removed him from her insurance policy. Schwartz pointed out that this story originally came from Pam, but the judge ignored this. Throughout the trial, Russ's friends were falsely accused of being accessories to murder, thanks to the prosecutor's closing speech. Fortunately, no charges were brought against them, even though Russ spent nearly 4 years in prison. In February 2015, attorney Joel Schwartz appealed Russ's conviction. However, back in 2013, Judge Christina Menem had already rejected Schwartz's request to review the case. In 2014, KTVI and the St. Louis Post-Dispatch revisited the case, uncovering some suspicious facts about Betsy's death and her true killer. Their investigation found that Pam Hupp had given contradictory statements to the police, including a false claim that she had left the Farrier residence immediately after dropping Betsy off. The Farrier murder case was marred by controversy and deceit. A police officer recalled being shocked that nobody suspected Pam, with everyone focusing on Russ instead. A 911 operator testified that Russ seemed genuinely shocked and agitated during their call. However, 2 jurors revealed that crucial information had been withheld from them, raising questions about why the sheriff's department would deliberately hide evidence that favored Russ. The media uncovered a disturbing web of relationships between the prosecuting attorney, ASI, and key figures in the case, including the captain of investigations and a lead investigator. This information led to Russ's retrial in February 2015. The Missouri Court of Appeal transferred the case back to the 45th Circuit Court, where a new judge, Stephen R., took over. He granted a new bench trial due to new evidence and released Russ on bond pending the trial. During the retrial, Russ was allowed to present incriminating evidence against Pam. Some police officers admitted that Pam had told them she saw Russ with another man in a car while she was dropping off Betsy. The CSI agent who handled the crime scene believed that Russ's blood-stained slippers were a setup, and that the blood stain was not from stepping in blood. Russ was acquitted of all charges and released on November 7, 2015. He later filed a lawsuit against ASI and 3 deputy sheriffs for ignoring exonerating evidence and fabricating evidence. In 2020, he was awarded a $2 million settlement. The case also led to repercussions for the officials involved. ASI faced a bar complaint, although it was rejected. She later announced that she was willing to cooperate with the U.S. Attorney's Office and the Lincoln County Commissioner to review her conduct. Judge Christina Menem was suspended for misconduct in a different case and was voted out of office in 2018 for her role in the Farrier murder case. In 2019, Lincoln County appointed a new attorney, Mike Wood, who reopened the Betsy Farrier murder case. He confessed that the wrongful conviction of Russ had inspired him to take the job. Pam was eventually interrogated as a suspect in the murder and was charged with first-degree murder. The new prosecutor, Wood, sought the death penalty due to the heinousness of the crime. Betsy Farrier was brutally murdered, stabbed 55 times, and her wrist was almost completely severed. Detective Mike Wood condemned the act as animalistic and charged Pam Hupp with the crime. Wood had strong evidence against Pam, including a $150,000 life insurance policy that named her as the beneficiary just days before Betsy's death. Pam had promised to put the money in a trust fund for Betsy's daughter, but instead kept it for herself, claiming that Betsy had wanted her to have it. In an interview, Pam claimed that she and Betsy were lovers, but Wood believed she was lying. Pam had also loaned her son $120,000 from her company in 2021, contradicting her earlier claims. Wood was convinced that Pam murdered Betsy by stabbing her with a kitchen knife while she slept on the sofa. He believed Pam tried to make it look like a domestic violence incident by walking around the room with socks on. The evidence against Pam included a text message she sent to Betsy's phone at 7:20 p.m. claiming she was home, but her call records showed she was still at the Farrier residence. The fact that Betsy was found lying on her side suggested to Wood that she was killed by someone she trusted. Pam pleaded not guilty of the crime, but her trial was delayed multiple times due to her attorney's death and other issues. Finally, in 2023, the trial was scheduled to start in 2025. Wood was not only determined to bring Pam to justice, but also criticized the Lincoln County prosecutors for mismanaging the case and showing bias against Russ Farrier, Betsy's husband. He pointed out a 2015 destruction order that could have led to the destruction of evidence, which would have made it impossible for Russ to be released from prison. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you, the case of Rachel Anderson. Rachel Anderson was born on January 28, 1994, in Warren, Ohio, to parents William, Bill, Rachel, and Patricia, Trish, Rachel. She grew up with a younger brother, John, with whom she shared a close family bond. Rachel graduated from Warren Harding High School in 2012, where she excelled academically as a member of the National Honor Society. She was also an active athlete, participating in soccer and volleyball. Despite the unconventional nature of her career aspirations, Rachel had always dreamed of becoming a funeral director since childhood. This passion led her to pursue a degree in mortuary science at Youngstown State University. Her hard work and dedication earned her recognition as one of the top students in her field and secured a scholarship. Following her undergraduate studies, Rachel enrolled in the Cincinnati College of Mortuary Science, graduating in 2016 with a Bachelor of Science in Mortuary Science. She became a member of the Ohio Funeral Directors Association and moved to Columbus, where she completed an internship at Shaw Davis Funeral Home. Rachel approached her work with great respect and saw it as her duty to support and care for families during difficult times. Rachel's internship was nearing its end, and she had high hopes of becoming a permanent employee at the Bureau. On January 26, Rachel Anderson celebrated her 24th birthday. The next day, her brother John visited her from Warren. Before he left to return home on January 28, Rachel gave him the key to her apartment. However, John accidentally took the key with him when he left. Later that day, Rachel realized she had misplaced her key and contacted John Kennedy, who had a spare, to arrange a pickup. After speaking with her mother around 6:30 p.m., Rachel retrieved her key from Kennedy. Since her apartment door could only be locked from the outside with a key, she had to leave it unlocked. Rachel stopped for dinner at her favorite restaurant and arrived home around 7:30 p.m. As she entered her apartment, she was confronted by a man who was waiting for her. He abducted her, taking her to the top floor of the building, where he restrained her using various objects. The man bound Rachel's feet and ankles with a hair dryer cord, tied her hands with a belt and blinds cords, and used a curling iron cord to restrain her wrists. He also gagged her to silence her. A man then forced Rachel to reveal her PIN numbers and subjected her to torture, abuse, and physical harm. Ultimately, he strangled her with a cord from an electric blanket, causing blunt force trauma and the stab wound to her head. After the attack, the man hid Rachel's body in a closet, leaving her partially naked with the electric blanket cord still tied around her neck. He then stole her car and used her bank cards to make purchases at several stores in Columbus. Forensic evidence revealed that bruising and red marks on Rachel's ankles and wrists suggested she was alive when the perpetrator restrained her. A DNA sample was discovered on the rope used to tie her up and on Rachel's body. The coroner's autopsy report concluded that Rachel's death was caused by a stab wound to the head and neck, contradicting the initial theory of strangulation. After interviewing Rachel's co-workers and her ex-boyfriend, who had an alibi, detectives explored alternative explanations for the attack. They returned to Rachel's apartment to search for clues, hoping to identify the perpetrator. During this search, they found Rachel's purse, which was missing her wallet, on the living room floor. 2 weeks later, Rachel's mother discovered the 9-inch steak knife used in the stabbing in a box in the apartment. Detectives initially thought the crime was a robbery, but the brutality and torture inflicted on Rachel suggested that the perpetrator was not just a thief, but a skilled and sadistic individual who took pleasure in exerting power over his victim. The investigators considered various motives but had no suspects and kept the investigation details secret to avoid compromising the case. Later, DNA samples were found on Rachel's body and at the crime scene, but unfortunately, they did not match anyone in the Special Services database. Fortunately, a surveillance video showed 2 people using Rachel's car to drive around the city after her death, and cash was withdrawn from her debit and credit cards. An investigation revealed a crucial lead when a phone number linked to the night of January 28, 2018, at Rachel's apartment was identified. Location data analysis led authorities to the suspect. Anthony Perrin, a 54-year-old convicted offender, was arrested. He had spent 33 years in prison for violent crimes, including rape, robbery, kidnapping, and attempted murder. Anthony Perrin had a turbulent past, beginning with his upbringing by grandparents, then living with his mother. Mental health diagnoses, including conduct disorder and antisocial personality disorder, indicated serious social problems. He entered a youth commission facility at age 14, then transitioned into foster care. At 15, Anthony faced his first charge in 1980 for abusing a young foster brother he babysat. A year later, he threatened his girlfriend's mother with a knife and attempted to drown her before fleeing. In 1982, Anthony Perrin was convicted of crimes in Franklin at 17 and served 24 years. After release in 2006, he moved to Georgia, was charged with forgery in 2007, and spent 9 more years in prison. Released in 2017, he returned to Ohio, required to check in with the sheriff's department every 90 days. On August 21, 2017, Anthony was caught with a woman in his car. 6 days later, he was stopped for driving without a license and found with a knife and shotgun, but wasn't arrested. Later, CCTV footage showed Rachel's car outside a store, with a man getting out of the passenger side. The driver wasn't visible, but police identified the man as Anthony Slits. He was questioned and revealed he was approached by a man who offered him money to cash in his ex-girlfriend's cards. Slits confirmed Anthony's identity and outlined their route on January 28, 2018, when they tried to cash out Rachel's stolen cards. Anthony Perrin remained at large until his capture on February 9, 2018, when he was taken into custody following a multi-day stakeout of his sister's home. Anthony was charged with multiple counts of serious crimes, including burglary, robbery, kidnapping, rape, and murder. Nearly 2 years later, his trial began on February 4, 2020, and 4 witnesses testified on the first day, including Rachel's co-worker Jonathan Kennedy, who was the person who found Rachel. The trial continued with testimony from Jonathan and the manager of the apartment complex where the crime occurred. Officer Frank Ghani, who was parked outside the apartment when the body was discovered, also testified and shared the surveillance footage with the jury. On the same day, Anthony expressed dissatisfaction with his attorneys to the judge and requested new representation. However, it became apparent that Anthony was intentionally delaying the proceedings. The prosecution presented expert witnesses on February 10, including a latent print expert, who explained how technology was used to track the use of Rachel Anderson's debit card and its connection to the crime scene. The defendant's sister also testified, revealing that her brother had given her the debit card, claiming it belonged to his girlfriend. However, after watching news reports, she discovered that the card actually belonged to Rachel. The final day of testimony was February 11th. The medical examiner testified that the defendant's DNA was found at the crime scene. Additionally, a forensic pathologist and a deputy coroner from the Franklin County office provided details about the extent of Rachel Anderson's injuries. During the final hearing on February 12, Assistant Prosecutor Amy Van Killen presented the state's closing argument, outlining the events of the crime and asserting that Anthony had murdered Rachel Anderson in cold blood. In contrast, defense attorney Larry Thomas acknowledged that Anthony had used Rachel's cards, but argued that he was not responsible for the crime. The defense attorney argued that the prosecution's case lacked concrete evidence, as the DNA and cell phone data did not definitively link Anthony Perrin to the crime. However, after deliberating for approximately 6 hours over 2 days, the jury of 4 men and 8 women found him guilty on all counts. The prosecution pursued the death penalty due to the severity of the crime, which involved the murder of Rachel Anderson during an aggravated burglary. Additionally, Anthony's prior conviction for a similar attempted murder of a woman weighed against him. Prosecutor Bryan stated that some individuals consistently disregard the law, and Anthony Perrin is a prime example. The sentencing phase of the trial began on February 18th. In an attempt to mitigate the sentence, the defense presented evidence of Anthony's troubled childhood, but the prosecution counter-argued that the aggravating circumstances of the case outweighed any mitigating factors. During the trial, it was established that Anthony Perrin was fully aware of his actions when he attacked Rachel. Despite this, several people testified on his behalf, including his mother, sister, a psychologist, and a former teacher. Anthony also addressed the jury, sharing a 13-minute unscripted statement about his troubled past, including an abusive childhood and difficulties after being released from prison. In his statement, Anthony described feeling helpless and claimed that the system had failed him. He blamed the justice system for his current situation but did not directly address the crime or apologize for it. After deliberating for 3.5 hours, the jury was unable to agree on the death penalty and instead recommended life in prison without parole. The sentencing took place on March 16, 2020. Rachel's mother was visibly emotional in court as the verdict was announced. Rachel's father also spoke, expressing his surprise at how Anthony, a repeat offender with a history of violence, was able to make demands and become hysterical during the investigation. The case of Rachel Anderson's murder drew to a close as Anthony Perrin's sentence was handed down. However, what stood out was not the severity of the sentence, but rather the disturbing behavior of one individual, Anthony Perrin himself. As an adult, he shifted the blame away from himself and onto the system, denying any personal responsibility for his heinous actions. Despite his efforts to deflect blame, Anthony received 2 consecutive life sentences without parole, one for aggravated murder and another for violent crimes. In addition, he was given 63 more years for other crimes including burglary, kidnapping, robbery, and various violent offenses. This marked a total sentence of multiple consecutive life terms plus 63 years. Hello friends. Welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Michael Redlich. Danielle was born in 1976 in Florida. Her family later moved to Cleveland, Ohio. She grew up kind and well-mannered with a creative nature. Danielle was the eldest child and appreciated beauty from a young age. She attended Valencia College and later enrolled in the psychology department at Baldwin Wallace University in 1996. Her mother, Caitlin Aquino, remarried with Michael but passed away from cancer after a short 2-year marriage. Caitlin, battling breast cancer, received high-quality care due to her Michael's insurance. They formally married for medical benefits, but the treatment was unsuccessful. After her death, her husband, Michael Redlich, raised their children alone. At 22, Danielle, the eldest daughter, returned home to help, bringing her brother and sister with her to live with Michael. Danielle later made the unexpected decision to marry her stepfather, Michael. Started as a friend in 2019. Danielle cared for the younger kids and worked at a bar at night, while Michael built his sports recruitment career. He became attached to the children and felt comfortable with Danielle, who saw him as a dependable support despite their 20-year age difference. Their easy and natural interaction gradually brought them closer together. Danielle initially kept her relationship with Michael hidden from her family. With Michael, she felt loved and protected. He found her a job at an advertising agency, had a high income, and devoted time to the family. Things were going well for both. When Michael received the job offer to become the Memphis Grizzlies vice president, he asked Danielle to move with him, but she hesitated. Danielle declined to join Michael due to her studies and familiar lifestyle, but they continued their long-distance relationship. One day, Michael showed her a cottage he bought for them by the Mississippi River, impressing her with its picturesque location. She eventually moved in, and Michael found her a job in radio. Initially, everything was perfect, but Michael's job later brought changes. Michael's new position brought increased stress and tension with management. He became stressed and tired, often unwinding with alcohol, which became a daily habit. He'd return home late, intoxicated, and angry. Danielle tried to support him, but his promises to stop were short-lived. After missing a planned dinner, tension between them grew. Danielle was upset, saying if he couldn't make time for her, he should have warned her. Danielle made a joke, which struck a nerve with Michael, and he slapped her across the face, causing her to stagger back. Her clothes and the floor were bloodied. In shock, she recoiled as Michael cried and apologized. He took her to a sports doctor, who provided first aid and recommended seeing a dentist and plastic surgeon due to the severity of her injuries, including a chipped front tooth. The next day, Michael made amends with a thoughtful dinner, showering his wife with attention and care. Despite the previous day's incident, she forgave him and chose not to report it, aware of the strict domestic violence laws in their state. This wasn't the first warning sign, however. Danielle had already experienced similar behavior from Michael before the incident. In 2003, Michael and Danielle had a daughter named Jaden. A year later, they decided to formalize their relationship. Life was going well for them, but Michael still faced obstacles at work due to a change in management, which prevented him from getting a long-awaited promotion. 7 years later, their son Sawyer was born, and both of two devoted themselves to raising their children. However, Michael's work struggles and added responsibilities took a toll on him, triggering a return to drinking and more frequent conflicts with Danielle. Michael's behavior finally reached a boiling point during an argument in which he physically attacked Danielle, grabbing her by the throat and holding her against the wall. The incident was incredibly frightening for Danielle. She realized she could no longer tolerate Michael's rough behavior and made the difficult decision to leave him, taking the children with her. Danielle moved in with her relatives, who had initially been skeptical of her marriage to Michael but had grown to accept it over time. In an attempt to win her back, Michael visited Danielle multiple times, apologized for his actions, and asked her to return home. After a period of separation, they eventually reconciled and restored their relationship. The years following were marked by uncertainty. The Redlick family relocated to California for 5 years, but struggled with Michael's drinking habit. After losing their jobs, they relied on savings until moving to Indiana in 2014, seeking a fresh start and stability. Michael moved first, while Danielle stayed behind in California with the children. They needed time to sell their old home and belongings, a process that took a year. The constant relocating had taken a toll on the family, especially the children, who struggled to adapt to their new surroundings. Meanwhile, the family's financial situation improved, but the distance between Danielle and Michael began to affect their marriage. They grew apart, communicating less and less, as the infrequent visits took a strain on their relationship. Danielle and Michael faced new challenges after reuniting. Danielle noticed Michael's emotional distance and dwindling romantic connection. In reality, Michael was struggling with personal issues related to age and health, affecting his intimate life. He confessed his struggles to Danielle, fearing rejection, but she responded with empathy and reassured him of her support. After trying various medications, they decided to try hormone injections. With the testosterone injections, Michael experienced a resurgence in his physical and mental health. He regained the energy and vitality of his younger years. However, this newfound energy also led to increased aggression. One evening, while Danielle was brushing her teeth, Michael attacked her in the bathroom. His reasoning for this violent outburst was that she had failed to wake him up when she went to rest the previous evening. Danielle was fed up with the situation and decided to leave. However, this only infuriated her husband, who then choked her. Danielle was unable to defend herself and started to lose consciousness. She felt like she was on the verge of death. When she eventually came to, she saw her husband standing over her, looking scared and confused, and begging for forgiveness. All Danielle could manage to do was to silently crawl away from him. Following this incident, they continued to live together in the same house and raise their children, but their relationship was irreparably altered. Apparently, the situation at home had reached a breaking point. Michael's drinking problem worsened, leading to more frequent arguments over small issues. These disputes often turned violent, causing stress and fear for the family. Despite her unhappiness and resentment, she remained in the relationship, still deeply loving her husband. Their daughter Danielle also suffered, becoming anxious and withdrawn. She took up photography as a hobby to distract herself from her troubles. Despite their issues, the Redlick family appeared to be a respectable family to outsiders, as they generally kept their disagreements private. By the end of 2014, the family had finally settled in Florida. Around this time, Michael decided to change careers, seeking a less stressful profession. He started working as the Director of External Affairs and Partnership Programs at the University of Central Florida and also began teaching. Although Michael's post-MBA career income was lower, the job provided him with a sense of fulfillment and stability. The family initially rented a home in Winter Park but eventually purchased a large, Mediterranean-style house in the area. The house had a unique feature, an attic floor that Danielle claimed as her own private retreat, often retreating there on nights when Michael's anger issues flared up. As Michael received testosterone injections, their intimate life briefly improved, but even in these moments, he could be emotionally harsh. Their relationship remained strained, and Danielle turned to alcohol to cope. With Michael working and providing for the family, Danielle managed the household and children, but her dependency worsened, and she became increasingly withdrawn. The frequent arguments eventually led to their separation in 2016. Despite Michael's controlling behavior, Danielle continued to allow him to see the children and provide financial support. As Danielle began working at a school, she started to regain her independence with the help of new friends. They helped her overcome her depression, but she still maintained a relationship with Michael, giving him unrestricted access to her life. This arrangement ultimately led to another violent argument, resulting in Danielle's hospitalization with a concussion. Fearing repercussions for Michael, she kept quiet about the incident. However, on this occasion, Michael took Danielle's silence as a sign that she would continue to tolerate his behavior. When questioned, Danielle revealed a shocking incident that had occurred in early October 2016. Michael had attempted to run her over with his car, but she narrowly escaped by jumping into the bushes. This incident prompted Danielle to visit the police department, but when detectives started asking detailed questions, she became hesitant and left without filing a report. The reason for their initial separation was the same as before, but they eventually reconciled and returned to their shared home. However, this decision ultimately proved disastrous for both of them. On January 12, 2019, at approximately 9 a.m., a 911 call was placed. During the call, a woman identifying herself as Danielle Redlick reported that her husband, Michael, had suffered a fatal heart attack. When the rescue service arrived, they noticed a strong smell of cleaning agent and a bucket of pink-colored water at the entrance to the living room. Michael lay on the floor in a pool of blood, lifeless, with a penetrating knife wound. Michelle, who made the call, had cuts on her wrists and was taken to the hospital after receiving first aid. The police investigation revealed that Michael Redlick's life had been taken, and forensic analysis confirmed the blood traces belonged to the deceased. The pink liquid was diluted blood, and someone had tried to erase a trail from the bedroom to the living room. Despite cleaning efforts, blood spatter was found on walls and corners, and a large knife was discovered at the kitchen entrance, with 3 smaller knives in the sink. Detectives questioned Danielle after her injuries were deemed non-life-threatening. She changed her story multiple times, initially claiming her husband died of heart disease, then saying he took his own life after an argument. Experts disputed this, citing the difficulty of self-inflicting such a wound and the usual preference for simpler methods. The autopsy revealed Michael died from blood loss, which could have been prevented with timely medical help. He also had a lacerated eye and high levels of alcohol in his system. An investigation found that Michael and Danielle had an argument days before the incident, witnessed by their daughter Jaden. Michael had been drinking and burst into the bathroom where Danielle was hiding, but Jaden intervened and took the bottle away. Danielle left the house and returned after Michael fell asleep. Jaden said it was the first time she'd seen her father so angry, but he apologized multiple times and was normally a loving father. The next day, they reconciled and attended a soccer game, but Danielle appeared upset and barely spoke. That evening, Danielle and her husband dropped off their kids at a friend's house for a sleepover, leaving them alone for the night. Later, Danielle stopped by McDonald's to pick up dinner and returned home around 10:30 p.m. When she arrived, she found her husband intoxicated. During dinner, Danielle received a text message from an unknown number. Her husband saw the message, became enraged, and physically attacked her, attempting to strangle her. In an effort to defend herself, Danielle grabbed a nearby knife and stabbed her husband in the chest. He fell to the ground, bleeding heavily. Danielle claimed that she immediately called for emergency assistance, but accidentally dialed the wrong number. An investigation later confirmed her account of events. Danielle explained that she lied to the 911 operator and during interrogation because she was afraid of not being believed that she had acted in self-defense. This fear was partly due to prior incidents that had damaged her credibility with authorities. She had recently been involved in a physical altercation with friends and had also resisted arrest when police arrived at the scene of the incident, even attempting to bite an officer. Her uncooperative behavior during the investigation led to charges of disorderly conduct and resisting arrest. As a result, she worried that her claims of self-defense would be met with skepticism. Danielle was on probation for about a year. The cuts on her wrists were self-inflicted but superficial, leading investigators to doubt her claim of trying to end her life due to emotional turmoil. They also found she wasn't a role model, because she having signed up on a dating site and being unfaithful after learning of Michael's infidelity. Analysis of messages between Michael and Danielle showed she still loved him, but felt betrayed and disillusioned after learning of his affairs and plans to leave her. She was heartbroken, feeling he didn't appreciate her dedication. The prosecution used this against her. The prosecutor claimed the crime was premeditated in a fit of rage due to Michael's infidelity and impending divorce. Neighbors confirmed their loud arguments often turned physical. While Michael was described as kind and helpful, Danielle was seen as quarrelsome. Video evidence showed her acting irrationally and attacking others. Danielle's lawyer claimed her actions were self-defense due to a history of emotional and physical abuse by Michael. Relatives confirmed he was rough and emotionally abusive, frequently humiliating her, although never in their presence. They also noted Danielle became nervous and quick-tempered after years of marriage, but a relative recalled calling her crazy. The prosecution claims Danielle deliberately left her husband to die, indicating she was waiting for him to pass away. They found she used a dating app on the night of the incident, suggesting premeditation driven by hatred and financial gain. Danielle stood to lose a portion of their shared wealth after the divorce. Her net worth was $1.2 million at the time of Michael's death. She had repeatedly changed her statements, possibly to confuse the investigation and tamper with evidence. The defense claimed Michael was a manipulator who preyed on his stepdaughter after his first wife's death. Despite a plea deal offering a 10-year sentence for manslaughter, the defendant insisted on her innocence, risking a life sentence for first- or second-degree murder. The jury delivered a verdict on July 17, 2022, finding Danielle Redlich not guilty of premeditated murder, but guilty of tampering with evidence. She received a 5-year suspended sentence, which was reduced to 2 years due to time served. Hello friends. Welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Carrie Leah Farver. Carrie Leah Farver was born on November 30, 1974, in Macedonia, Nebraska, USA. As a single mother, she raised her son, Max Maxwell, after experiencing failed relationships in the past. Raising Max was challenging for Carrie. Despite her immense love for her child, she struggled with depression, which led to a period where she spent a month in bed. During this time, her mother, Nancy Rainey, took care of Max. Carrie's difficult relationship with Max's father and unstable living conditions contributed to her mental health issues. At the age of 20, Carrie's struggles led to a diagnosis of bipolar disorder. This condition causes extreme mood swings, ranging from euphoria, increased productivity, and excessive friendliness to depression, bitterness, and feelings of powerlessness. Although bipolar disorder significantly complicates daily life, Carrie's doctor found an effective treatment for her in the early 2000s. With this treatment, Carrie was able to manage her condition and live a relatively normal life. Whether Carrie wanted to settle her personal life is an open question. On one hand, what woman doesn't dream of a suitable partner? On the other hand, why commit to someone who might bring worries and misfortunes? Carrie was raised in a loving family and had an active lifestyle. She played sports and aspired to become a doctor. However, her dreams were cut short during her first medical practice when she fainted at the sight of blood. Deciding not to risk her health or her patients, she pursued a career in programming instead. In the fall of 2012, Carrie received a job offer in Omaha with good prospects and decided to take it. However, her son Max was in middle school and preferred to stay in his familiar surroundings, so he remained with his grandmother in Macedonia. According to Amy, a friend of Carrie's father, Carrie had a radiant smile that drew attention whenever she entered a room. It was likely this quality that caught Dave Kropa's eye when they met at an auto repair shop in November 2012. As Carrie showed him something inside her car, a Ford Explorer, Dave felt an instant attraction. Their first date arrived soon after, but their time together was interrupted by numerous calls and messages from a woman named Liz, who eventually stopped by Dave's apartment to collect something she had left there earlier. Dave told Carrie about his past relationship with Liz, whom he met on a dating site 6 months prior. They had been together for a while, but he ended things because she was extremely clingy. Carrie was understanding and wasn't fazed by Liz's presence in Dave's apartment, recognizing that everyone has past relationships that can resurface. 2 weeks after moving in, Carrie started dating Dave. They had discussed their expectations beforehand and agreed to a brief, casual affair. Liz, whose full name is Shaunana Elizabeth Gollier, was the first person Dave met online in 2012. Dave and Liz had children around the same age. However, Dave felt Liz wasn't a suitable long-term partner due to her limited education and lack of shared interests. Their relationship focused more on physical intimacy than meaningful conversations. Over time, Liz grew increasingly interested in what Dave was doing when she wasn't around, particularly in regards to who he was seeing. However, Dave consistently reminded her that they were in an open relationship, implying that she shouldn't be concerned about his interactions with others. He also reassured her that she had the freedom to date other men if she chose to do so. Despite Dave's openness, Liz couldn't shake off her feelings of dissatisfaction and jealousy, particularly towards Dave's children and their mother, Amy. She struggled to understand the close bond that persisted between Dave and Amy even after their breakup. As a result, Liz's behavior became increasingly possessive, prompting Dave to create distance between them. It was during this period of separation that Carrie entered Dave's life. Carrie was not only beautiful but also stylish, intelligent, and a great conversationalist. Dave found himself lost in conversation with her for hours, feeling an undeniable connection as they shared common interests and perspectives. Liz noticed that Dave was becoming increasingly distant, so she tried to rekindle their connection by sending messages, emails, and making phone calls. However, he had no intention of stopping his interactions with Carrie or anyone else for her sake. Meanwhile, Carrie and Dave were spending more nights together, which was convenient for Carrie's work schedule and enjoyable for Dave. Carrie seemed to be taking things lightly, focusing on having fun and not looking for anything serious. In December 2015, Liz was shot and non-fatally wounded, leading her to suspect who might be responsible and realize she needed to take action. 2 years prior, on November 13, 2012, Carrie had kissed Dave goodbye before he left for work, expecting to see him later. However, that would be the last time they saw each other. At 9:45 a.m. that morning, Dave received a surprising text message from Carrie stating she wanted to move in with him permanently. Dave found this message disconcerting as they had previously discussed and agreed not to rush into a relationship, being happy with their current situation. Dave replied that he wasn't ready for such a change, but Carrie's response was unpleasant and filled with profanity. He was shocked to discover that all of Carrie's belongings were gone from the apartment. This led him to believe she had left him for good. That same day, Carrie also removed him as a friend on Facebook, which seemed like the end of the matter. However, Dave started getting multiple rude texts and emails from Carrie daily, containing curses and threats to ruin his life. Carrie sent a large number of these messages, all of which were aggressive. Uncharacteristically, she also stopped showing up for work, despite being known for her punctuality. Strange messages weren't only sent to Dave but also to her mother and 15-year-old son, Max. She claimed to have found a job in Kansas and planned to take Max with her, but wanted to be alone for the time being due to worries over her failed romance. In May 2013, Carrie posted on Facebook that she'd left of her own free will and was tired of criticism. She wasn't missing her old life but wasn't ready to return home. Carrie asserted her independence as a grown woman, stating that she had the right to leave home if she chose to. She apologized for hurting everyone by leaving abruptly. However, as time passed, Carrie failed to reappear. Her mother became increasingly concerned when Carrie missed important family events, including her own birthday, Max's birthday, and other celebrations. The final indication that something was seriously wrong was when Carrie missed her father's funeral. Liz began receiving messages from Carrie, which were insulting, humiliating, and even threatening. Carrie warned Liz to stay away from Dave. Confused by Carrie's behavior, Liz reached out to Dave, who revealed he was facing a similar situation. Carrie was sending him messages and emails, accusing him of wrongdoing, calling him a liar, and vowing revenge for the pain he allegedly caused her. The messages were sometimes ominous, with Carrie claiming to know what Dave was doing at the moment. The shared experience brought Dave and Liz closer together, but also made Dave feel guiltier about the trouble he had caused. The messages from Carrie grew more menacing and were filled with grammatical errors and illogical content. This was unusual, as Carrie's mother claimed that her daughter had always been a calm person who wrote coherent and well-structured letters and documents. Carrie was known to be meticulous about spelling and writing style. It's possible that she had experienced even more severe mental health issues. Her actions seemed to be driven solely by her uncontrolled mental state. A key indicator of dissociative identity disorder, also known as split personality, is the presence of separate, simultaneous self-consciousness in each ego, each with its own distinct memories, thoughts, behaviors, and inclinations towards specific actions. This might explain Carrie's unusual behavior and altered writing style. Everything suggested she was unstable, which is why the police didn't initially consider her missing, instead focusing on stopping the pursuit of Liz and Dave. They tried to track Carrie's cell phone, but it was unsuccessful due to blocked signals. Meanwhile, Liz and Dave continued to receive hundreds of texts and emails, sometimes simultaneously receiving nasty messages when they were together. Dave and Liz continued dating, but he felt uneasy around her as she became increasingly demanding. Despite claiming to be fine with their no-commitment relationship, Liz's behavior suggested otherwise. Every time Dave tried to end things with Liz, Carrie would start texting him, bonding with him over their shared victimization. This common ground drew Dave and Carrie closer together, causing them to reunite repeatedly. In January 2013, a missing car was surprisingly found in Dave's front yard. However, the fingerprints on the steering wheel didn't match Carrie's, and the car showed no suspicious signs. The police eventually returned the car to Carrie's parents. Carrie continued to message Liz and Dave, escalating her behavior by sending pictures of their children and threatening to harm them unless Dave left Liz alone. As time passed, Carrie's stalking persisted, and Liz's jealousy grew, frustrating Dave. He became exhausted with the events unfolding in his life and eventually found the strength to end his relationship with Liz. This decision came shortly after a tragic incident in August 2013, when Liz reported a fire at her home that resulted in the death of all her pets, including a snake, a cat, and 2 dogs. Liz suspected Carrie was responsible, citing repeated threats made via texts and emails. The incident marked a significant turning point in the case of missing person Carrie Farver, leading to Carrie's placement on a federal wanted list. Tens of thousands of messages were meticulously analyzed. Law enforcement seized cell phones from Dave and Liz, as they believed Dave was also in danger. Someone had vandalized the auto repair shop where he worked and thrown a brick through his window. It appeared that Carrie's anger was directed at anyone in Dave's life. Consequently, Amy Flora, Fave's ex-wife, began receiving threatening messages from Carrie. As Dave spent time with his children, he also saw Amy regularly. The police were perplexed as to why Carrie, who had dated Dave for less than 2 weeks, was now stalking Dave and his ex-wife. The investigators decided to focus on Dave Coupa, as Carrie's disappearance raised many questions that needed to be answered. It was a mystery that didn't add up. Carrie Farver's family was also tirelessly searching for her, exploring every possible lead to find her. Their efforts finally paid off in the spring of 2015, when detectives Ryan Avis and Jim Doty took on the case. Unfortunately, they found no evidence that Carrie was still alive. One of the detectives shared their thoughts with ABC News. It's unusual for adults to suddenly leave without using any money. No one saw or heard from her, which doesn't make sense. She had a good income and a nice home. I've come to believe that I have no proof she's alive. With the help of a digital forensics expert, the detectives analyzed data from Kropa and Gore's phones from 2013. Kawa discovered that Carrie had sent over 50,000 texts and 15,000 emails to Dave in just 3 years. Whoever was impersonating Carrie became increasingly sophisticated, trying to hide their IP address and true identity. Somebody with expertise in computer programs seemed to be behind the strange occurrences. In December 2015, Liz Gard contacted the police again, this time reporting that she had been shot in the leg on her own doorstep. She claimed her attacker was Amy Flora, not Carrie. Coincidentally, Dave was missing a gun that Amy may have had access to. This new development raised suspicions that Amy might be involved in Carrie's disappearance. The investigation uncovered a lead that suggested Amy's motive. She may have been seeking revenge against women connected to Dave Krupp. Amy's relationship with Dave had been complicated, and the presence of other women in his life might have prevented them from reuniting. The police promptly questioned Amy, but surprisingly, she had a solid alibi. Multiple witnesses confirmed that she was not at Liz's house when the shooting occurred, so no arrest was made. The investigation became increasingly puzzling. New details emerged from the analysis of Liz's cell phone data. Investigators found fake email addresses using variations of Farver's name and an app used to schedule messages. This discovery shed light on how Liz and Dave received simultaneous messages from Carrie. The investigation led to suspicion of Liz Gollier, which intensified when her fingerprint matched those on Carrie's car steering wheel. It was now clear who the culprit was, and the priority was to prevent further harm. To catch Liz off guard, detectives devised a plan to create a fake narrative, pretending to still consider Amy the prime suspect, aiming to prevent Liz from escaping or destroying evidence. Liz fell for the trap. She was thrilled at the opportunity to eliminate another rival who was threatening her relationship with Dave. Soon after, Liz Gollier gave the police an email supposedly written by Amy. The email included a confession to kidnapping Carrie, along with specific details about the crime. According to the confession, Carrie had been stabbed in the stomach or chest area before her body was disposed of. The email also revealed information about Carrie's car and home that had not been publicly disclosed. According to an investigative spokeswoman, Liz provided detectives with information that only someone intimately involved in the crime could have known. In doing so, she inadvertently implicated herself in Carrie Farver's murder. The letter made it clear that the crime occurred in a car, prompting authorities to re-examine the victim's vehicle. Upon removing the seat covers and fabric, specialists discovered a blood stain belonging to Carrie Farver. Liz managed to send messages posing as Carrie without arousing suspicion, but it's unclear how. Reports suggest that Liz Gollier led a double life, dating both Dave and a man named Garrett. Notably, Garrett's IP address was linked to messages sent under Carrie's name. When questioned, Garrett revealed that he had been in a long-term relationship with Liz. Out of kindness, Garrett invited Liz to move in with him and his children after a fire. However, their relationship became complicated and deteriorated significantly once they started living together. Garrett would often take care of Liz's children while she isolated herself in her room or left the house. Garrett was shocked by what the police told him. It was discovered that Liz spent 40 to 50 hours a week pretending to be a missing woman. Although her room was messy, no significant evidence was found. However, investigators did discover several cell phones and electronic devices in the last place she stayed. In late December 2016, Shaunana Liz was charged with first-degree murder. The county prosecutor commented on the complexity of the investigation, stating that most murders are dark, but this crime was particularly bizarre. It would take some convincing to make someone believe it actually happened. Liz's actions, including letting her dog die in a fire she set herself and shooting herself in the thigh, were attempts to deflect suspicion from herself. Liz's attorney, James Martin Davis, believed the case against her was weak since it was largely based on circumstantial evidence. Key pieces of evidence were missing, including Carrie's body and the crime weapon, and Liz had not confessed to the crime. In fact, there was no conclusive proof that Carrie was even dead. The defense team requested a mistrial, which would allow a judge to determine the extent of Shaunana's guilt. The prosecution presented a substantial amount of complex electronic evidence, as well as physical evidence. They argued that the amount of blood found on the passenger seat of Carrie's car supported the theory that she had been stabbed. Investigators also found a direct link between Shaunana and Carrie's murder by analyzing a memory card that Shaunana had used around the time Carrie went missing. The memory card, which was found in a tablet stored at Dave's residence, contained deleted images. It was clear that the foot belonged to a people who had been deceased for several years. Notably, Carrie had a similar tattoo among her distinguishing features. Her mother later confirmed that the tattoo indeed belonged to Carrie. The photo solidified the conviction of Shaunana Liz was predator. The judge ruled her guilty of first-degree murder and handed down a life sentence without parole, stating that Carrie Farver did not disappear by choice but was tragically murdered. Authorities suspect that Shaunana murdered Carrie, allowed her body to decompose, and then burned the remains to eliminate all evidence. Motivated by jealousy, she decided to eliminate her rival. After disposing of Carrie, Shaunana took her cell phone and used it to send messages that would make Farver appear unstable and win back Dave's favor. When this plan succeeded, Shaunana wanted to eliminate Amy as well, but she became too entangled in her own scheme and ultimately fell into her own trap. Shaunana, also known as Liz, was also found guilty of arson for setting fire to her own home in August 2013 and attempting to blame it on Carrie. The fire destroyed the house and killed pets, resulting in an additional 20-year prison sentence. She is currently serving her sentence at the Nebraska Correctional Center for Women, despite maintaining her innocence. Dave revealed that he received thousands of emails and text messages signed by Carrie over the years. However, He claimed that he never noticed Carrie stalking him during their relationship, which contrasts with his experience with Shaunana. So, what happened to Carrie's son, Maxwell Farver? According to his LinkedIn profile, he followed in his mother's footsteps and became a computer programmer. He graduated from the University of Iowa with a degree in software engineering and data science, and is now married. Although it's unlikely he's forgotten the past, he may have found some peace with his new family. As for Dave Kroppa, he now lives a private life, away from the public eye. He doesn't have a public account on any social media platform. This disturbing crime story is a harsh reminder of the complexities and manipulation that can occur in human relationships. It highlights how vulnerable we can be in our own surroundings, unaware of the true nature of those around us. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you, the case of Nadine Lott. Nadine Lott was born in the late 1980s in Arlo, a town on Ireland's southeastern coast. She was the eldest child of Claire and David Lott. She has 3 younger siblings, Phoebe, Tanith, and Kayla. By the summer of 2012, Nadine, 26 years old, had grown into a charismatic woman. She was eagerly planning a trip to Australia, looking forward to a vacation filled with exciting experiences, sports, and new friendships. Nadine stood out from her peers with her bright smile and charming personality, which drew people to her. She had a large social circle and could easily connect with anyone. However, beneath her outgoing exterior, Nadine was a sensitive and vulnerable person who always tried to see the best in others. She cherished her family, who had loved and supported her throughout her childhood. Nadine discovered a passion for photography, capturing life's fleeting moments to preserve the world's beauty. This hobby eventually turned into a career, and she became a successful beautician, helping others enhance their natural beauty. Nadine experienced some difficulties in her personal life. She wasn't eager to settle into a serious relationship, preferring to enjoy her independence and spend time with friends. This desire for freedom led her to take a trip to Australia, where she was attracted by the warm climate, stunning beaches, and exotic landscapes, finding everything fresh and romantic. Nadine met Daniel Murtaugh in Australia, and it was as if they were polar opposites. While Nadine was outgoing and lively, Daniel was quiet and reserved, with piercing eyes and a toned physique that immediately caught her attention. Despite their differences, they felt an instant and inexplicable connection, sharing common interests and a deep sense of intimacy. As they spent more time together, their days were filled with unforgettable experiences and memories. They strolled along stunning beaches, explored the crystal-clear waters, and shared their deepest dreams and secrets. Nadine was captivated by Daniel's surfing skills, and he was drawn to her carefree spirit, genuine nature, and infectious laughter. Their connection grew stronger with each passing day, unencumbered by any barriers or reservations. Daniel, a few years Nadine's senior, hailed from Dayan, a suburb of Dublin, where he worked as a window fitter and lived with his family. Nadine viewed it as a casual fling without any serious commitments. Phoebe was the first to discover Daniel. Shortly after, Claire, the mother, learned about the relationship from her child. Claire quickly suspected that this relationship may not be long-lasting. Nadine's life changed dramatically when she found out she was pregnant with Daniel's baby. A few months later, Daniel attempted to rekindle their relationship and start a family, but it ultimately didn't work out. In November 2013, Nadine gave birth to a baby girl named Kia, but Daniel was noticeably absent during this significant moment. Instead, her sister Phoebe was the one who offered emotional support and remained a constant companion. Phoebe was by Nadine's side during childbirth, took the first photo of mother and daughter, and played a vital role in helping Nadine navigate the challenges of new motherhood. Nadine's pregnancy marked a turning point in her life, as she transitioned into her new role as a mother. Despite the difficulties she faced, Nadine found solace in Phoebe's unwavering support and love. Nadine's story is a poignant reminder of the complexities of love and relationships. Although her relationship with Daniel was unfulfilling and lacked deep emotional connection, Nadine was determined to provide a stable and loving environment for her daughter. But Daniel failed to take responsibility for his actions and showed no interest in being a devoted father, leaving Nadine to raise Kia on her own. Nadine had always tried to provide the best life for her daughter, Kia. In 2016, she wanted to build a home with her loved ones, so she rented a house where everyone could live together as a family. However, her hopes were crushed when Daniel, Kia's father, failed to move in with them. This realization marked the end of Nadine's. Daniel's constant absence and broken promises had left her emotionally drained, so she made the decision to end their relationship and start a new chapter in her life. Despite their separation, Nadine had held on to the hope that Kia would still be able to maintain a relationship with her father. Claire, Nadine's mother, had a more realistic view of Daniel's. His love for boxing was a higher priority for him than his family. In contrast, Nadine remained devoted to her daughter Kia, providing her with the love, care, and support she required. As Kia grew up without her father, she had her mother as a role model, teaching her to persevere through challenges. In October 2019, Claire suggested that Nadine celebrate her birthday in Rome. During the trip, Nadine's daughter, Kia, also referred to as Nine, confided in her mother about the struggles she was facing in her life. Nadine had moved on from her relationship with Daniel and was thriving as a single mother. She enjoyed her job, took pride in her accomplishments, and was happy with her life. Her future looked promising, especially after being offered a modeling job. Her happiness was short-lived when she discovered that Daniel continued to make unfulfilled promises to visit their daughter Kia in Ireland. When Daniel requested a meeting to give Nadine money for Kia, she was skeptical, suspecting that he just wanted to see her, not their daughter. She agreed to his request, but only because she didn't want Kia to think poorly of him. Nadine still held on to the hope of creating a real family, despite the increasing impossibility of it. To shield Kia from disappointment and pain, Nadine made excuses for her father's absence. She wanted to protect her daughter from Daniel's irresponsibility and neglect. Meanwhile, Daniel was reluctant to let Nadine go and was fearful that she might start dating other men. As a result, Nadine felt forced to keep her personal life hidden from him to avoid his controlling behavior and threats. In 2019, Nadine Lott's life drastically changed after she ended her relationship with her partner, Daniel. She started dating a new partner from Turkey, but her attempts to keep this relationship private were unsuccessful. Daniel discovered Nadine's new partner and became furious, sparking a series of stalking incidents that caused her immense distress. On December 5th, Nadine sent a clear message to Daniel, stating that their relationship was over and demanding that he stop harassing her. She believed this would finally bring an end to the toxic relationship. However, on December 13th, Nadine asked Daniel to watch their child, Kia, while she attended her aunt's birthday celebration at a local pub. Daniel agreed to watch Kia at his home in Condon, a different location from where Nadine lived, which was in Wicklow. On the night of December 14th, Daniel repeatedly tried to contact Nadine, calling her at 5:57 and 1:26 a.m., but she didn't answer. He eventually sent her a message, asking her to return home soon. Nadine returned home and changed her clothes, but the events that followed are unclear. What is known is that Daniel attacked Nadine, terrifying her 6-year-old daughter, Kia. The noise and screams caught the attention of a neighbor, Ila Klanovich, who investigated the source of the commotion. Ila saw Nadine lying on the floor in her hallway with Daniel standing over her, his face contorted with rage and panic. Horrified, Ila retreated to her apartment and quickly contacted Nadine's family. When Claire, mother of Nadine's, heard Ila's story, she felt overwhelmed with fear and anxiety. Daniel fled the scene in his Volvo, leaving behind a trail of dust and blood. When Claire rushed into Nadine's apartment, she was met with a disturbing sight. The walls and broken glass were covered in blood splatters, reflecting the horrific events that had unfolded. But the situation was far from over. It was now 9:50 a.m. Claire, Phoebe, and Kyle walked into the kitchen and were shocked by what they saw. Nadine's body was lying on the floor, brutally mutilated and showing no signs of life. Meanwhile, about 20 miles away in the town of Lar, Daniel lost control of his car and crashed into a ditch. Miraculously, he escaped with only minor scratches. John Beck-Ken stumbled upon the wreckage and was shocked by the scene: a car with broken headlights, shattered glass, and a lone vehicle lying in a ditch. His initial thought was that the driver had been drinking after a Christmas party, but as he approached the car, he was surprised to find it empty. Suddenly, Daniel emerged from the fog, his eyes vacant, his body shaking, and his clothes covered in blood. Daniel confessed to the crime in a despairing tone to a witness. He was then taken to the hospital in an ambulance, repeatedly muttering that he loved Nadine, as if seeking forgiveness. Meanwhile, Nadine's apartment was in disarray. When paramedics and police officers arrived, they were met with a strong smell of blood. The walls and furniture were smeared with it, and the scene was chaotic. Paramedic Ian Clark was struck by the extent of the destruction. Broken dishes, shattered glass, and bloody footprints indicated that a violent crime had occurred. Phoebe and Kyle rushed Nadine to urgent care after a severe accident, where medical professionals were able to save her life despite her critical injuries, which had left her unconscious. Nadine was rushed to St. Vincent's Hospital, where she was admitted to the intensive care unit. Doctors documented severe injuries to her head, neck, and chest at 10:58 a.m. Her condition was critical, with 64 injuries found on her body, the cause of which was unclear. Nadine received multiple blood transfusions, but her condition remained critical. Claire hoped that Nadine would recover. Claire stayed by her daughter Nadine's side in the hospital, bringing comfort with familiar items from home like family photos, Nadine's favorite perfumes, and cherished toys. Despite the doctor's bleak outlook, Claire was resolute in her support, believing that her love and care would help Nadine navigate the challenging road to recovery. Meanwhile, Daniel was scheduled to appear in court on December 16th. The court decided to hold him in custody until his trial. On the same day, Claire accompanied Nadine to a follow-up examination to assess the damage to her brain. Claire prayed that Nadine would find the strength to pull through. Tragically, Nadine's injuries were too severe, and she passed away on December 17th, between 3 o'clock and 4 p.m., without ever regaining consciousness. Irish Police Colonel Dean McCarthy described the violent crime as one of the most brutal he had ever witnessed. After the murder, Chief State Pathologist Dr. Linda Mogan performed the autopsy at the city funeral home on December 18th. Following the autopsy, the victim's loved ones, particularly her family, were left with many unanswered questions. Claire was consumed by her thoughts, trying to make sense of the events that had transpired. The next day, the killer, Daniel, confessed to the heinous crime, describing how he attacked and brutally murdered Nadine. According to Daniel's account, he started by grabbing Nadine, hitting her on the head, and then repeatedly punching her with his fists. Despite her efforts to resist, Daniel continued the assault, kicking her and eventually stabbing and strangling her with a charger cord. Kia, a witness to the horrific attack, pleaded with her father to stop the assault, but her cries were ignored. Despite Nadine's desperate attempts to fight back, Daniel had remarkable physical strength and was impossible to defeat. A funeral service for Nadine was held on December 22nd at St. Mary and Peter's Church in Arlo, her hometown. The ceremony drew over 1,000 mourners, and hundreds more watched the live broadcast as they gathered to bid their final farewells. 6 people carefully carried the coffin containing Nadine, a young and beautiful girl, as if she were asleep in eternal rest. The altar was surrounded by scarlet velvet roses. Nadine's mother, Claire, sat in the front row, struggling to hold back tears as she gazed at her daughter's coffin. Her eyes shone with love and admiration for she who lay before her. Family and friends gathered nearby, overcome with grief, as they clutched handkerchiefs to their faces and openly wept. David Lott, Nadine's father, stepped forward, his voice shaking with sorrow, and tearfully placed one of Nadine's elegant handbags beside the coffin. Nadine had a remarkable ability to turn anything into a stunning fashion accessory that perfectly matched her one-of-a-kind style. Next, Kyle, a close family friend, approached the altar, holding a photograph of Nadine and Kia, beaming with happiness as they hugged each other. Kia, confused and grief-stricken, clung to her mother's side, unable to comprehend the loss she had suffered. Phoebe, Nadine's sister, brought a pair of shoes to the altar, the very ones Nadine had been planning to wear to her prom. Overwhelmed with emotion, Phoebe struggled to hold back her tears. Tanith, another close friend, carefully placed a photo album on the altar, filled with cherished memories of Nadine's carefree days, joyful parties, and radiant smile. These memories would remain with them forever, a poignant reminder of the happy times they had shared with Nadine. With genuine empathy on his face, Priest Michael Moore led the ceremony with heartfelt words of eternal life and hope that soothed the grieving family and friends. Looking directly at Kia, he voiced gratitude for the immense joy she had brought Nadine during her life, wishing that Kia's own life ahead be one rich with care, protection, and enduring love. He reassured Kia that her mother's loved ones would always be there to protect her from harm, serving as her guardian angels. Nadine's sisters, Phoebe and Tanith, tearfully bid their final farewell, overcome with grief at the loss of their beloved sister. The ceremony concluded with the playing of funeral music, after which Nadine's coffin was laid to rest in the San Gabriel Cemetery. As her loved ones said their final goodbyes, they took comfort in knowing that Nadine's soul was at peace. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you, the case of Su Xingqi. Tam Xing Fai, a 43-years-old faculty member, was noticeably absent from work, sparking concern among his colleagues. On July 4th, a coworker named Ma tried to reach him on his mobile phone at 11 a.m., but there was no answer. Ma wasn't immediately worried, assuming Tam Xing Fai was busy taking care of his family's adopted dog, which had a skin disease and was scheduled to visit the vet. However, when Xing Fai failed to show up for a meeting at the university's finance department on July 5th, Ma's concern grew. He tried calling Xing Fai's mobile phone again, but there was still no answer. Unfortunately, Ma didn't have Xing Fai's landline phone number, so he couldn't try contacting him that way. By July 6th, Xing Fai had been absent from work for 2 days with no communication with his colleagues. One of his co-workers finally reported the situation to the finance department, which prompted Xing Fai's superiors to call his landline phone. Unfortunately, no one answered that call either. The police contacted the library where Helen Tong Yin-yi, the 33-years-old wife of the missing man. Library staff reported that she was also absent from work without prior notice. They, originally from Zhongshan in Guangdong Province, China, had been married for 11 years and had 2 daughters, Hiu Man, 10, and Hiu Ing, 7 years old. Despite their difficult living conditions and financial struggles, the family was known to be kind, happy, and cheerful. They lived in an abandoned recycling station on Waju South Road, but Xing Fai often took his daughters on outings to have fun in town. Their children were well behaved, and the family seemed to be a happy one. Given their circumstances, it was possible that the family had decided to take a vacation together. However, something unexpected must have happened, preventing them from returning. Xing Fai's colleagues repeatedly tried to contact him by phone, hoping for a response. Eventually, Someone answered, but to their surprise, it was a middle-aged man with an unfamiliar voice, not a member of the family. A man claiming to be Xing Fai's cousin called his workplace, stating that the family had taken a summer vacation to Guangdong province in mainland China. He allegedly received Xing Fai's phone for safekeeping, but couldn't provide a return date for the family. However, the call only heightened suspicion among Xing Fai's co-workers. They found it out of character for Xing Fai to suddenly leave without notice, as he was a diligent and organized person. If he planned a vacation, he would have arranged it with his children's school in advance. Moreover, the family was responsible for 9 stray dogs, raising concerns about who would care for them. Xing Fai's family situation also raised questions. His father, a sailor, had gone missing, and his mother was living in a nursing home due to illness. Xing Fai regularly visited her every week, making it unlikely that he would abandon her to go on vacation. Eventually, the police were called. One of Xing Fai's colleagues accompanied them to his home, an abandoned recycling station in Pingqi village. During the trip, a suspicious person was spotted. A short man was seen from a distance near the Xing Fai family's fence before quickly disappearing. Initially, no attention was paid to this, and they continued on. Upon arrival, they found the gate to Xing Fai's home locked. The police investigated the property and interviewed the neighbors. The abandoned recycling station covered a large area of approximately 450 square meters, but most of it was empty space, about 350 square meters of flower beds. The construction area was only about 90 square meters, and the building was constructed illegally. The original owner had built several tin houses on the site, using it as a waste recycling facility. A stone house on the opposite side was used as a pig farm, with very few people living in the area. As a result, the police only had one neighbor to question, an elderly woman named Wang who lived alone across the street. Wang claimed to have known the family's schedule and reported that they usually tended to their garden in the afternoon. Su Wang had limited knowledge of the family's personal lives, mainly due to their remote location. She was aware that the family didn't receive many visitors, and the only relative she knew of was Xing Fai's cousin, Su Xingqi. Wang didn't have information about Su Xingqi's address or that of Xing Fai's uncle, who supposedly lived in a nearby stone house. When the police questioned Xing Fai's colleague, they learned that a cousin had answered Xing Fai's phone, leading the police to believe it was Su Xingqi. However, Wang clarified that she didn't know Su Xingqi's address. She did report hearing cries for help from the house on July 5. In response, the police conducted door-to-door inquiries in Pingqi village and eventually tracked down a man matching Wang's description at a stone house on Huazhu Road. The man, 42 years old Zhu Shenqi, confirmed that he was Xing Fai's cousin and stated that he occasionally visited the family home to help with renovations and gardening. When questioned about the phone call, Su Xingqi maintained that the family had gone on vacation to China. On July 5, Xing Fai visited his mother at the nursing home and then returned home to inform Su Xingqi that he planned to travel to Danyuan, China for a few days. Due to the high roaming fees, Xing Fai asked Su Xingqi to hold on to his Hong Kong mobile phone until he returned. The person seen fleeing the scene by police and Xing Fai's colleague was actually Su Xingqi, who was leaving after feeding the family dogs. Su Xingqi's behavior and expressions were observed, and he appeared to be telling the truth. His story seemed consistent, and there were no obvious discrepancies. When asked if he had a key to the family home, Su Xingqi denied it. Despite finding Su Xingqi, the police continued their investigation. Going door to door in the village. A local resident reported a stranger borrowed money from a villager, leading to a heated argument. The villager threatened to seek compensation from Xing Fai's family, who were struggling financially due to his mother's hospitalization and existing debts. The villagers initially believed the stranger was not Su Xingqi, but they suspected the family might be hiding to escape their debts. However, when the police inquired about Su Xingqi, the villagers revealed that he had been dishonest. They confirmed that Su Xingqi regularly visited the Xing Fai's home to perform maintenance and repairs, and he was always able to enter the house on his own, even when no one else was present. This information led the police to conclude that Su Xingqi must have had a key or access to the home Xing Fai's. In fact, he did have a key, which Xing Fai had given to him, as witnessed by Wang. When the police asked Su Xingqi for the key, he initially denied owning one, claiming he used a spare key for renovations that he had returned. However, his demeanor had changed, and he was avoiding key details. When the police threatened to search his home, Su Xingqi became agitated and suddenly remembered another house key that he had not returned. He retrieved the key from his dresser and handed it over to the police. Although Su Xingqi's behavior was suspicious, there was no direct evidence linking him to the family's disappearance. As a result, the police placed him under surveillance while continuing their investigation. During their investigation, police used a spare key to enter the home, where they found a scene of disarray and evidence of a ransacking. Fresh blood stains on the walls suggested that a violent incident had occurred on the property. The presence of a sink full of dirty dishes in the kitchen raised suspicions about the family's claim to have traveled to China, as it seemed unlikely they would have left their home in such a state before departing. A search of the master bedroom turned up the family's identification cards in a dresser, which prompted the lead investigator to contact the border crossing office. The office reported that the family had not left Hong Kong. Further investigation of the house uncovered a blood-stained shirt in a side room and a blood-stained plastic water pipe in the corner. Police then deployed sniffer dogs to search for additional evidence and potentially locate the missing family members. The dogs detected a scent and discovered blood stains under recently disturbed soil 9 meters away. Furthermore, despite it being summer vacation, their children, Hiu Man and Hiu Eng, were enrolled in summer school, indicating that the family would not have been on vacation. It became clear that the family had been victims of a crime, so a special team was set up to investigate. Due to the late hour, the police cordoned off the scene, restricted access to Pingqi village. Su Xingqi was confined to home. He was the prime suspect in the case. Su Xingqi promptly confessed. According to Su Xingqi's statement, he was from Huanpu in Guangdong province and typically resided with his sister, wife, and 2 sons, aged 15 and 16, who suffered from memory issues. Su Xingqi previously earned a living selling motorcycles in Junction City. However, following Guangdong's ban on motorcycles in 2006, sales plummeted. Financial struggles led him to reach out to his cousin, Xing Fai, in Hong Kong, seeking employment opportunities. Xing Fai helped Su Xingqi secure a construction job that provided a daily salary of 500 Hong Kong dollars, including accommodation and meals. After working for half a month, Su Xingqi became dissatisfied with his salary, which was reduced to 220 Hong Kong dollars due to company deductions. He impulsively quit his job and returned to China. However, in 2007, a typhoon damaged his home, and he needed money for repairs. Su Xingqi asked Xing Fai to help him find work in Hong Kong again. When Xing Fai couldn't find him a job, he proposed an alternative arrangement. Xing Fai would pay Su Xingqi from his own salary to help with household chores and repairs at his home. Su Xingqi accepted this offer and began traveling to Hong Kong every other month to work on Xing Fai's home and garden. Su Xingqi claims that he and Tong Yanyi, Xing Fai's wife, began a clandestine romantic relationship. However, Xing Fai discovered their relationship on July 3rd. On July 5th, Su Xingqi accompanied Xing Fai to a nursing home to visit his mother. Su Xingqi snuck out of the nursing home to return home and continue his affair with Yan Yi. Unexpectedly, Xing Fai returned home early and, in a fit of rage, physically confronted Su Xingqi. In a state of panic, the man grabbed a 25-centimeter-long fruit knife and stabbed Xing Fai until he fell to the ground, dead. Overwhelmed by what had just happened, he wanted to turn himself in to the police. However, Su Xingqi refused to let that happen. Since he couldn't change his mind, Su Xingqi decided to kill Xing Fai. Su Xingqi found some wires in the corner of the room, charged at him, knocked him to the ground, and tied his hands behind his back. Su Xingqi then covered Xing Fai mouth and nose with tape and put a plastic bag over his head. Before this, their 2 children were in their bedroom watching cartoons. They heard the commotion and their parents warning to run away, but instead, they ran towards their parents and saw their father dead and Su Xingqi in the process of killing their mother. The children ran back to their room, crying, and locked the door. Since the parent was already tied up, Su Xingqi left to pursue the children. Su Xingqi picked up a pair of pliers, opened the door, and used more wires to restrain the children. He tied their hands behind their backs, covered their mouths and noses with tape, and put plastic bags over their heads. The children, Hiu Ing and Hiu Man, also suffocated shortly after. After killing the whole family, Su Xingqi was at a loss of what to do next. He turned to his home to think it over. He thought that hiding them in a ditch or body of water would be too easy to find, and that dismembering them would be too exhausting and time-consuming. So he settled on burying them on their own property. On July 6th, he returned to the home to try and clean up as many blood stains as he could find. He then got to work on digging the hole. He dug a hole deep and wide enough to hold the family of 4 and quickly placed their bodies inside of it. He also disposed of the murder weapons in the pit before filling it back in. The police believed Su Xingqi's story, despite being skeptical about his motive, and took him to the location where he claimed the crime had taken place. He pointed out the spot where the sharp knife, water pipe, iron pliers, and other tools used in the crime were hidden. On July 7th, the police called in the fire department to assist in unearthing the remains. The firefighters arrived with excavation tools and gas masks, as the bodies were buried near a septic tank. However, they quickly encountered a problem when they hit a layer of cement while digging. It turned out that Su Xingqi had failed to mention in his confession that he had filled the pit with cement before covering it up. The firefighters were unable to break through the cement with their tools, and the police had to call in a private engineering company for assistance. The engineers arrived with high-grade tools and began drilling through the concrete slab. However, when they reached a point where they saw human hair, they became uneasy and refused to continue digging, not wanting to encounter a dead body. It took the police 13 hours to persuade them to resume the excavation. After excavating the pit, authorities found it to be 2.5 meters wide and 6 feet deep. The bodies of the 4 family members were discovered at the bottom, all barefoot and wearing only t-shirts and shorts. Xing Fai's body was at the very bottom. His hands and feet were bound with electric wire, and he had multiple stab wounds to his abdomen, back, and neck, with his clothes stained red with blood. The other family members were similarly bound with electric wire. Yanyi's mouth and nose were covered with tape, her hands and feet were bound, and her face was distorted. 2 family members, Hiu Man and Hiu Ing, showed no obvious signs of trauma, leading police to suspect they may have been buried alive. Su Xingqi was formally arrested and interrogated. During the interrogation, he altered his confession. He admitted that he lied about the affair. Shan Hui kicked Su Xingqi out of the house and banned him from returning. Despite this, Su Xingqi came back to apologize and was surprisingly forgiven by Xing Fai. Su Xingqi returned to the house on July 3rd to start working, and it seemed that his relationship with Xing Fai had been repaired. However, on July 4th, Su Xingqi attempted to molest a family member. Su Xingqi fled the house in a rage, not wanting to alert the neighbors. The next day, Su Xingqi tried to force his way into the house again, claiming he wanted to apologize. However, Xing Fai had anticipated this and returned home early. They got into an argument, which escalated into Su Xingqi stabbing Xing Fai. Su Xingqi's later confession matched his initial one, but with the additional detail of filling a makeshift grave with cement. However, after the bodies were taken away for autopsy, it was discovered that Su Xingqi's account of the events was inaccurate. The autopsy revealed that Xing Fai's murder was more brutal than initially described. Xing Fai had sustained 9 stab wounds to the head and neck, nearly 80 stab wounds to the body, and 10 stab wounds to the hands and feet. Contrary to Su Xingqi's claim, Xing Fai was strangled, not suffocated with a plastic bag. Hiu Ying's cause of death was the only accurate part of Su Xingqi's account. Forensic analysis of the home found at the cutlery and dishes did not have the family's DNA on them, but they did have Su Xingqi's DNA. This suggested that Xing Fai was not killed in the kitchen, but rather elsewhere in the house. The investigation also revealed that the murder was premeditated, as the cement used to bury the bodies had been purchased by Su Xingqi prior to the murder. Furthermore, the weapon used was not a kitchen knife from the family, but rather one belonging to Su Xingqi. Additional investigations by the police found that the family's bank cards had been used at an ATM after the time of death, but no money could be withdrawn due to repeated failed PIN number guesses. The cash and bank cards belonging to the family were also missing. Su Xingqi's motive for the crime was robbery, and it was premeditated. Whenever the police pointed out inconsistencies in his story, he would suddenly come up with a new explanation. According to Su Xingqi, his family's ancestral home in China needed urgent repairs, and his 2 children required 100,000 in cash to cover their school fees. He was not well liked in his local community, so he knew it would be difficult to borrow money from his neighbors. He turned to Xing Fai for help because his business trips to Hong Kong had not generated enough income. Su Xingqi suspected that Su Xingqi was wealthier than he seemed and that he is very stingy. The reason for his low salary during his time working for Xing Fai was that they were exploiting him for low-cost labor. On July 3rd, Su Xingqi traveled to Hong Kong without informing anyone and waited until July 5th, when they had a day off from work. When Xing Fai returned home and found Su Xingqi there, he asked if he needed to cook something, and they men went to the kitchen together. Su Xingqi asked to borrow 1 million Hong Kong dollars, but Xing Fai rejected the request. He explained that he had to use the money for his mother's medical treatment and his daughter's education. However, Su Xingqi didn't believe him and accused Xing Fai of only using him for cost labor. Xing Fai became angry and ordered Su Xingqi to leave. As Xing Fai turned his back, with a concealed knife on, Xingqi attacked him from behind, covering his mouth and stabbing him. Su Xingqi then restrained in Hiu Ying and Hiu Man and began searching the house for cash and bank cards. He demanded to know the password for the bank cards, and Xing Fai intentionally gave him a fake password. Su Xingqi didn't realize this at the time. Su Xingqi claimed that he had killed others by covering their mouths and noses with tape and putting a plastic bag over their head. However, when he went to the nearest ATM to withdraw cash, he discovered that the PIN number he had been given didn't work, and realized that Xing Fai had lied to him. Upon returning home, Su Xingqi discovered that everyone had suffocated to death in his absence. He found the food he and the others had been preparing and decided to eat it next to the 4 corpses while contemplating how to dispose of the bodies. After stealing $6,000 in Hong Kong dollars from Xing Fai's body, Su Xingqi buried the corpses and tools in a small pit, then went to sleep at Xing Fai home. The next morning, Su Xingqi realized that the smell from the bodies might lead to their discovery, so he bought cement and returned to the home. He dug up the pit, poured in the cement, and refilled the hole. Su Xingqi then stayed at the home to answer any calls to Xing Fai's cell phone or house phone, telling callers that he was taking care of things while the Xing Fai family is on vacation. However, Su Xingqi did not expect his ruse to be uncovered so quickly. Even later, he continued to lie about many details, including when he bought the cement and the cause of Yan Yi's death. At this stage, the police didn't think they needed to continue obtaining an accurate confession. In their opinion, they had collected enough evidence to proceed. The trial took place at the Hong Kong High Court on October 28, 2010. Su Xingqi initially pleaded not guilty and altered his previous statement. He claimed that his original story about the affair was true and that Xing Fai was killed in self-defense, while Hiu Man and Hiu Ying were killed accidentally. The defendant stated that he had falsely confessed to extortion and murder brutality, which included physical abuse and suffocation. On November 23, the jury delivered a unanimous guilty verdict for the murders of Xing Fai and Yan Yi. However, the defendant was acquitted of murdering Hiu Ying. Despite this, the defendant received a life sentence for the 3 counts of murder and 1 count of manslaughter. The presiding judge criticized the defendant, describing him as lacking a conscience and being unrepentant. The judge also accused the defendant of fabricating the self-defense story and affair to tarnish the victims' reputations. After Xing Fai's family death, who lived in Hong Kong, surprisingly defended him. They accused Xing Fai of being a hypocrite and the real villain. According to them, Xing Fai was exploiting Su Xingqi for cheap labor and taking his money. However, the neighbors and residents of Ping Chi village were outraged by these claims, forcing Su Xingqi's family to move back to China to avoid the backlash. The crime was considered one of the most shocking in Hong Kong's history. The community showed an outpouring of support for the family Xing Fai's, with many visiting their home to offer condolences. Netizens also raised more than enough money to cover the funeral expenses. Additionally, the family's 9 stray dogs were adopted by another family. Every year on July 5, the adoptive family would take the dogs for a walk in Ping Chi village, near the home of their former owners. On August 9, 2022, 55-year-old Su Xingqi passed away in Hong Kong's Stanley Prison due to liver cancer.